Go live. It looks like we're live. Looks like it's streaming. It says live in the corner. It's telling me we got this and that. So I'm making sure. I'm pretty sure there's a 10-second delay or so. Dun, dun. And we are up. That's good. All right. And we have one viewer, which is me. Looks like. There we go. Okay. All right. So this is a special edition of Ask a Skeptic. You'll see the format's a little different because I'm using software, because the old software I used to invite guests on wants to charge me a lot of money now. So I don't do that anymore. So I was able to get this from a friend. And my first guest is Beth Darlington. Wow. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Kenny. Hi, everyone.
Woo! Now I'm going to briefly go over the rules. Make sure, first of all, can everyone hear me okay? Can everyone hear her okay? Do we look okay? I guess it doesn't show me actually like the comments up here, but I do have it up on screen so I can see the comments when they pop up. Let me see.
Hi.
Turn it off there. All right. So basically the rules are, one, this is for paranormal related questions. So it's a Q&A. It's a live Q&A. So you can ask questions about ghosts and ghost hunting and paranormal stuff and maybe parapsychology, even Bigfoot and UFOs, whatever. You can ask a question. We will give opinions. I'm used to saying I will give you an opinion, but I have a guest today. You're my first guest. Do you know that?
Thank you. I'm very
right on here. Excellent. So you'll get our opinions. We'll talk about it. And we may even debate on topics, that's always fun when we argue with people. When people argue, I love that. Like, that's what I tune in for. But rule number 2 is that we don't know everything. And just like everyone that's watching, we don't know everything. So we won't have the answers to every question you have. I am not opposed to looking it up, though. I have an extra screen that's over here that I can look stuff up on Google and just see what's going on. And then we can talk about it a little bit more. The third major rule is this is for friendly discussion, just to get out there for two people with similar and different beliefs and backgrounds, talking about a topic and, seeing what kind of conversation we have. So be nice, be respectful, don't be a dick. That's the basic rule. And then, the fourth unwritten rule is, if I get too drunk, let me know and we end the podcast. And that goes for her too, because you might not see it, but I think she's drinking too. There we go. Uh-huh.
It's Saturday night. We're in self-isolation. I think
I really thought about renaming this. Instead of saying this is Ask a Skeptic, I was going to just call it Drunken Skeptic. Just go with that. I think I might do that eventually. Nice. So, hey, Phil. Phil's in the house. Cool. So, with that said, the rules out of the way. This is something that I have a guest on who some people that usually watch what I do might not know who you are. And likewise, the people that follow you, because you're a guest on this show, they might not know who I am. So, let's take turns, you first, because you're the guest, and just give a little background on ourselves so people know who they're dealing with.
Yeah, of course. Well, as you know, my name is Beth Darlington. I'm going to say this very generic term or thing that most people say who consider themselves to be paranormal investigators. They'll often say, I've always been interested in the paranormal. So I am one of those people. I've always had an interest in it, but it was probably more from this perspective of objects moving on their own, possibly, or how someone might know information from someone else, possibly, and not through the generic channels that most people would understand that from. So that's always been there. And it's only been in about the last 12 years that I actually really start to get into it. And yes, it was generally originally through those wonderful TV shows that most of us either love or hate or cringe or want to throw exactly, for entertainment purposes only, that kind of thing. But originally that got my interest in the sense of, instead of just being interested in this and reading about it, I can actually be more active in the sense of being involved in something and finding my own answers, like most of us do. But then as I've gradually, definitely, as you can tell, as time has gone on, it's that scene has very much changed. And certainly definitely realizing that there's a lot more to it than just kind of, saying, come at me, bro, to dark. But I then started a website. So I was living here in the UK, originally went back to Australia for 10 years and then started up a website called Access Paranormal, which is what I'm still running today. And it was just literally for the paranormal community in Australia. But now it's actually grown more into an international database pretty much, and just like online learning content for people to go and get stuck into how, methods and how to investigate, and free software that's available and things like that, and ways to look at, if you experience particular phenomena, how to piece that apart and how to find out what's really going on before we even really look at anything that could be possibly paranormal at all. So that's the angle of it. Some would call it a nominalistic psychology side of it. It is that, but probably a little bit more scaled back than that. But it is definitely of that sort of frame of it, sort of thing. So, and yeah, I've been doing that ever since. I've spoken at conferences at Scarefest, at Las Vegas Paracon. I was asked to be a panelist at Skeptic Australia a couple of years ago as well, which was great because it was a panel of different paranormal topics, and I was representing paranormal investigators, and it was a fantastic time. So I've been able to really get stuck into this topic a lot more and be able to provide really good level-headed knowledge about it. I mean, people are getting out there and investigating locations, or what people would perceive as investigating. So obviously some people aren't doing it the right way or the wrong way. There is something, people are behaving in a certain way in these particular locations, and just literally providing the best information I can for people to be able to go out and do it. You can't tell what, it's unregulated, this field, so you're literally on the back foot anyway, but it's providing at least good, solid, common sense information for people, so when they go out there, they're not completely feeling like they're out on their own, and there is a better way of actually investigating possible paranormal phenomena. So that's me.
That was great. That was great. That was so detailed. Oh my damn, that was great. I loved it. Usually I ask for a bio and people are like, yeah, I'm a paranormal investigator, and I do this for years, and that's, I'm cool. That was nice.
I told you I could talk, man. I warned you.
Oh boy, 2 talkers in the house. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll go. For anyone that doesn't know who I am, my name is Kenny Biddle, and I run this blog. I am Kenny Biddle on Facebook. I also have a YouTube channel where I do videos, and I pretty much take a skeptical point of view to a lot of paranormal claims. I do videos in where I take gadgets, the common ghost hunting gadgets, and I take them apart and see what's inside them. I literally take them apart after I test them. And we had a nice conversation before we started where I do all my testing before I take them apart, because sometimes they don't always work when I put them back together, because there's like extra pieces. I don't know. I also write a column for Skeptical Inquirer magazine, and I've been doing that for the last, I think, 2 years. And I have something like 25 or 30 articles up there where I investigate claims of paranormal, either methodology, the gadgets, TV shows. I do reviews on them and some of the methods and information they put out. I host workshops and or just lectures at different conferences. I've been to SciCon in Las Vegas 3 times now, actually 4 times, 3 times as a workshop host. And I've also talked at both paranormal conferences and events, and I also do a lot of skeptical and humanist events, which is nice. I get to talk to a wide range of people, and I talk about not only the gadgets and stuff that I do, but how to solve mysteries. That's one of my big things. I love to solve a mystery, like dig deep like down the rabbit hole, get in there and actually solve the mystery. I don't like to just promote the mystery. I want to solve it. So that's the only reason I take on a case. And that's pretty much me. I mean, for anything else, I mean, everything's online. I do these live Q&As just to get conversation going. I like to cross, what would you call it? Cross interact, I guess, because I do promote like science and skeptic people going to paranormal conferences. And likewise, I really push for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts to attend science and skeptic conferences. So you can see what the other side is not only doing, but what they're promoting, how they think, why they think that, and you get just a better understanding of the other person. So that's me in a nutshell. I won't do the dad joke of, oh, this is me in the nutshell. That's how I sneak the dad joke in there. I'd say I'm not going to do it, and then I do it anyway. So this is a Q&A. again. And so if you have questions, if you have a question that you would like us to answer from both our point of views, if you have a comment about something that you want to start a discussion, if you have a topic, throw it out there in the comments section. Make sure you do it on the I Am Kenny Biddle Facebook page. That's the only feed that I can see. So if this is shared by somebody else and you comment on their page, I'm not going to see it. So there you go. Let me see if we have any. Oh, we have cheers. Who do we have? We have Bud, Tammy, Phil Wheeler, Jason Garner, Tammy Beth.
Great name.
Me. Do vortexes spin the other way below the equator? Oh my God.
Oh, I love it.
Thanks,
love
Phil.
it. Just like the toilet.
Isn't that a myth?
It's just like the toilet. It is. Yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah, I have absolutely no idea, but I think that's a great comment.
If we had mobile cameras, I would say go into the toilet and flush it, and we'll take a look.
No one in Australia is awake just yet, so I won't be able to find out yet.
Oh my. So again, yeah, if you have questions, like this is just something that we put together only a few days ago. So if there's questions or topics and stuff, put it out there. I do have some filler just in case, people are shy and they don't want to talk, even though we have like 16 people in watching right now and no one's asking questions. I guess nobody cares about us. But I have a question that I'm interested. I'm always interested in hearing people's views on this because I deal with this on a daily basis. And the question is, how do you deal with giving and taking criticism?
Ooh. Really, really great question again. That has been something that has taken time. That's in the beginning, it was not well. When you start to put yourself publicly out there, you're going to get it regardless. If you're going to put your viewpoint across, you've literally got to learn to get a thicker skin. Over the years, I've learned to take what people are saying, not the way they're saying it. That's the only way I get around it. So it takes the heat out of it. It also takes the anger out of it. Trust me, I've had some very well-known skeptics, particularly in the States, that have had some fabulously interesting comments on certain material that I've shared. And like I said, I'm not immune to it, and I never shy away from it either. I think sometimes the way in which somebody comes to you with a point, and it's not the criticism is not from a place of genuineness, then they're actually doing themselves more harm than good. And you can read between the lines. Most of us are fairly intelligent and can do so. So I generally just literally read and look at it, and of course it depends on what form it comes as well. So if it's verbal, then obviously you're going to get all your clues from how somebody's being genuine about it, and then you're able to actually look at it and go, all right, okay, I can see your point of view. I remember saying once, we only mentioned offline as well, Richard Saunders, bless him, he's so sweet. I remember posting a meme saying, the best paranormal investigator is a certain shade of grey. And he was like, well, no, you need to be skeptical because the paranormal doesn't exist. I'm like, yeah, I get it. But for me, you need to be in the middle, and you're going to sway from either side. You're going to move a little bit to the believer side, a little sometimes if you come across an experience or a case. And then sometimes you might lean more towards the skeptical side of it. So I think there's also that side of it too to keep in mind. So it obviously depends what side of the fence I'm sitting on when I do get this criticism. So I think it is definitely listening to the message, take the emotion out of it, take the fire out of it. And generally people will want to be able to help, and sometimes they may not be great at communicating it. And you're not the only person that they're going to speak that way to. That's another thing as well. Don't take it personally. That person will speak that way probably with their family, friends, work, whatever. So that's the other thing too, is like, hey, you're just another person. You're not that special. Yeah. So take the heat out of it, listen to the message. And look it up. I mean, there's been books, like I say, sometimes there are reading material that I come across, and it does feel like eating a lemon to me. There's some really strong skeptical arguments like, oh, this is nothing, it's a bag of crap, blah blah blah. And I'm sitting there going, just breathe it out, girl. Just like breathe through the pain and just keep reading. But I'll read it. I'll still read it anyway, because I think it's important to understand another side, a part of the story. So yeah, it's just and it takes time, Kenny, mate. It takes time.
That's great. That's awesome. I love that. I love how you touched on the listen to the message. Listen to that instead of the tone that's being given, because it's very hard to give criticism without sounding like a dick.
An asshole. Yeah.
I mean, to be perfectly clear, I mean, yeah, it's very hard to give criticism. And in the beginning, like years ago, when I really went over to the skeptical side, like fully on, I was angry at myself. So because I thought like I was fooled, I was an idiot for so long. I believed everything that came out. And unfortunately, I took my anger out on other people that still believed in this stuff. So my criticism was bad. It was really bad. But over the years, I've learned that basic lesson. It's not exactly like it's all about what you're trying to do, not how you deliver it.
That's exactly it.
Delivering it is important too. It's because you need good content, but you also have to be polite about it.
Yes,
and there's still some people that like you give criticism to, and you try to give them tips or pointers and say, hey, why don't you try this later? And what I found is that they take it personally. And I think that's what you're touching on, and what I've touched on before is that you cannot take it personally. This is basically business, and we're looking at each other, and that's from a science point of view. That's criticism is a big part of science. Like
that's what I was about to mention. Peer review is part of investigators will use the term science and evidence really loosely. Like if you really are, and someone's come up and given constructive criticism, that's a small part of what is called the peer review process. Right. That's part of what it is. If you want to be using the word science and saying you're involved in it in a scientific way, then you can't get your panties in a bunch, basically. Yeah, I mean
that's true. That is true, because you're supposed to put it out there, and that's how you understand what you're doing better. If I have something that I can't understand, if I collected, I don't know, say like a video, and I'm like, wow, there's an anomaly in there, and I can't figure out what it is, I'm not going to post it as, oh, look at this mysterious figure. This must be a ghost. It's got to be paranormal because the place is known to be haunted. No, I'm going to put it out there and say, hey, to all my friends that work in video, photography, or whatever, special effects, what do you think this is? Tell me what this is. Here's the specs. Here's the conditions where I filmed it under. Give me that review. And it is hard. It is hard to take criticism. I get it. I've written the articles I write for Skeptical Inquirer go through an editor, 2 editors. And one of them is Ben Radford. And he's my main editor that I send my stuff to. And he is not shy about telling me, no, this sounds stupid. don't do this. Or if this is wrong, you can't do this because it's wrong. And he'll correct me. And it's very hard to take that criticism, but I've learned over the years, it's not personal. He's not attacking me. He's attacking the material, and the material is wrong. That's why he's attacking it. And I need to fix it. It's my fault. So yeah, criticism is, I mean, that's good. I'm glad you started that off, because that was good. I totally just piggybacked off of your answer.
And that's cool. But it's like when you were talking about when people post something like, oh, I think I might have come across something, and they'll post it on social media. When they've posted it on social media, it's like another thing about when it comes to criticism, it's what someone's intent when they actually put it out there. So that a person's general intent when that kind of thing comes along is, I think, is obviously not for it to be critiqued. It's definitely not for it. It's more the fact they just want validation for what they've so that's when you're going to, and I think that's one thing I've learned over the years of because before I would go, oh, actually, no, I'm going to see if I can help this person. I already know the signs before, just in the way that which they've posted it. You just back away. I'm not even going into this argument.
Some people are just, they're looking for the likes, the thumbs up. They're looking for people to say that great catch, that's awesome. They are not looking for anyone to offer any kind of rational explanation. They just want the praise. And yeah, I do come across that. There's quite a few individuals that I deal with, a lot, more than I like to admit, that are like that. Yeah. We do have some questions. This is great. So Megan wants to know, does Beth have any evidence that she believes proves the existence of ghosts? Beth?
Great question. And to answer that in a couple of words, absolutely not. I don't have anything. I don't think I've really seen anything. There's things I've been curious of, but that's the worst thing is when people send you stuff, then they want you to analyze it. And I'm like, I can't. At first, I used to do a lot of that. And then I got to the point of trying to help educate people in how to look at their own information. But it just got to the point where, like I said, it's trying to preach to people that were just not even in the open mind frame anyway. So I personally definitely have not. I think it's so dubious, even when you're there yourself. We're so infallible when it comes to trying to survive as we are as humans. You know, we're built to survive. Our bodies are going to adapt to environments in the dark generally, which is when this kind of stuff happens. So already we're on the back foot. So when it comes to evidence, no, absolutely not. I have not found. There's things I've found that, like I said, have been interesting, but there could be about 50 different explanations for that one weird sound. I'll put it out and I go, weird. But, probably could be explainable. Now, obviously getting a lot more intuitively better when those situations happen for myself going out. I will then go and see if I can find, jumping on the floorboards if it's something creaky or all this kind of stuff, like keeping your environment in mind and keeping the fact that, like I say, is it an inside job or an outside job? Is it my psychology that I need to look at, or is it my environment? And that's where I usually break it apart from there. So, yeah, I 100% have not come across anything I would consider evidence, and I don't think anyone has generally, clearly at this point in time, right this moment at this recording.
I like how Megan directed that question specifically to you and not me, but because I've addressed that a lot. But yeah, I like that, and I mean, if you want to follow anybody who's watching, go to Beth's YouTube page. I mean, you have some of the videos you have are really entertaining and they're good. I watched the one about the XF information for photographs, digital photographs, which is great. It explains pretty much everything about, looking into digital photos that are sent to you and trying to spot if someone has, intentionally altered it, and little tips and tricks here. So really good. I like that. Let's see. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right. Dian, Dian, I think.
Right.
Asks, if you see a ghost, will you be afraid?
At first, probably. Because often these things happen generally. It's spontaneous phenomena. So it's often when you're caught off guard, when you're not really thinking about it. So I probably initially would be. And then literally, I think within seconds, my curiosity kicks in. Before, in the past 10 years ago, I would have backed away very quickly in one direction, which would probably been at the exit. But now it's like I've grown my paranormal testicle, and I'm getting better and better at actually literally it becomes this almost like an adrenaline if I've ever seen anything. There was one particular situation where I think I did, and I've not been able to we went back and tried to debunk it as much as possible and find a plausible explanation. But the interesting thing at the time is that it wasn't just myself that saw what had happened. Someone else had as well. So that, again, I find really interesting. But yeah, I'm gone.
I think the first thing I would do would be to check my flask to make sure to see how much I drank. Be like, okay, am I hallucinating here? What's going on? And then I honestly think I would go up and poke it. With my finger, just to clarify, with my finger. I would just poke it because I've done that. Gettysburg is a famous Civil War site.
Yep.
And I've been there dozens of times. It's not that far from me. So I always used to walk by reenactors, and I would just do like one of those in the shoulder if they got close, just to make sure, especially if I saw them on the battlefield. I mean, and that was in my ghost hunting days. So now, not so much because they get mad. But I mean, I think that's my first two steps. Like, all right, am I sober? And are they real? Let me go up and poke it. And if I poke through it, I think I'm going to be fascinated. I don't think I'm going to be afraid. I mean, I can't guarantee it because in the moment I might actually pee myself. I don't know. But thinking about it, it's like, okay, this is cool. Like there's a figure here and I'm poking my hand through it, which shouldn't happen. And my instincts are going to want to figure out why. Like, how does this happen? And how does it feel? And I think my curious mind would take over more and push the fear out because I'm like, oh, obviously this thing is standing here letting me do this, so maybe I can talk to it, you know. And then I pull out the recorder and like, dude, we're gonna have an interview because this is gonna be a great podcast.
Yes, and it's like that. Mind you, it's interesting where people have when they've said they've seen an apparition, it's often as life as you and I. So it's interesting if you, like you said, you stuck your finger and it's like it looks exactly as you and I in front of each other. And sometimes people claim to have conversations as well with entities as well. So it's, you know, it's, and of course there's why would something do that? Why that time? Why that spirit? Why, you know? And then it turns around and disappears. Was that, what was that person under? Did they have a lot of stress happening in their lives? Was it, you know, as we know, there could be, shoots off to the wonderful rabbit warren that is of paranormal. But it's just, you know, it's like, I love what you said, Poe, because like you can't do that right now because of Corona. So you probably don't have to get away with that.
Oh, that's a good answer. Okay, let's see what else we got. We got Bud Kelly asking, he says, ask Beth, does she think certain regions on the planet has more or less paranormal claims compared to the United States? Only because I believe we got more claims due to the awful paranormal TV shows. Wow, I love that little disclaimer on the end.
I think I think it's probably on par with population. It's probably the same. It's just the way in which people interpret their experiences and the way in which they're reported. So I think it's probably the same. I think what the TV shows in the States have done is actually, as we know very well, is kind of sort of dictated how a lot of people, when they're first starting out, thinking and trying to look at possible paranormal phenomena, how to actually do it when it's not the case at all. But I think it's probably the same. That's been my experience so far, having lived in Australia, now living here in the UK, having been to the States every year for about 7 years in a row, I think it's been, except for this year. But anyway, for obvious reasons. But yeah, I think it's about the same. I think it's about the same, regardless of these fabulous shows.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think it does have a correlation with population and history, like how long has a place been settled and lived in, because you're going to get more stories from a place that's been around for 200, 300, 400 years than you're going to get from a place that's only been around for like 20 years. So yeah. And the more people, the more rumors spread and stories spread, and then you have paranormal tourism and all that shit. We won't even get into that, but yeah, I agree. That's it. That was a good question. Phil Wheeler says, Kenny, can you explain your belief or non-belief of the paranormal? Do you believe but have no proof, or not believe entirely? I know the answer, but for everyone else's benefit. Thanks, Phil. I guess I don't like to have beliefs. And truth be told, I learned this from watching Dogma, one of my favorite films, Dogma, Kevin Smith film. Oh, I love Kevin Smith. But I don't like having beliefs, because beliefs are very hard to change, because they become ingrained in your core system of you. I'd rather have ideas, because ideas are easier to change. Because if I have an idea about something, I hear about something else, and it proves to be better than the previous one, then I usually go with that idea. So that's what I try to do. When it comes to paranormal, I used to believe. I really did. I grew up practically, I think, the same way that you described earlier in the show. I grew up believing in all of this stuff. I read all the books. I watched In Search Of was like my number one show growing up. Unsolved Mysteries, all of that. Like, I was so intrigued. I believed that one day I was going to meet the Loch Ness Monster. Like, I was totally convinced. And then the more I got into it, the deeper I got into this hobby, and especially with photography, on the photography side of it, the more I realized, okay, I do have an explanation for this, and I can figure this out. And that really fueled my I guess, interest in investigating further and learning how to properly investigate. So my beliefs kind of went out the door. So I don't have a belief. I don't believe that the paranormal exists, but I'm willing to change. And that's an important part of it. It's not just I strictly say, no, there is no paranormal. There are no ghosts. There's no demons, angels, Loch Ness. There is no Loch Ness. Monster or Bigfoot. I'm going to say 99% I'm okay with that. That this does not exist. But I'm open to more evidence. If you can show me evidence that, yes, there is an afterlife, that not just evidence that you think is evidence, but evidence that has gone through the scientific workhorse and the methodology and has been proven and repeated over and over again, then yeah, I'll definitely change my mind. And I think that's the core definition of being open-minded. You know, you can have your own ideas going in, but you're willing to consider other ideas, not necessarily accept them, but consider them and go with that. So I think that's my answer. I think that answered your question, Phil. What do you think, Beth?
Absolutely. It's a really great way to look at it. I've never really thought it. People say, do you believe in that there's an afterlife? I believe in the possibility of one. And then, oh no, come on! No, do you? You go out to investigations. I've run, paranormal events where I'm with a group of people, and we'll sit there with the recorder and we're asking out, is anybody here? This kind of stuff. I've done that. I do that, and we'll probably do that in the future. But do I believe in afterlife? It's like with you. I believe in for me, it's the possibility of one. When people say, but there, science says there isn't an afterlife, so why are you doing this? It's like, well, we don't know what's happening. There could be so many different aspects of different parts of science, social science, physics, all types of stuff going on that we haven't discovered yet. that could be what is actually happening. But then again, just because science has said, okay, 100% no, then where should we stop all our discussions on it? Maybe it's something that we haven't figured out that could be a possible afterlife. I don't know, but and I guess at the same time, I think it's important to remember to like you said, to be open-minded about it. So when I put information ahead, I'll say, okay, science says, there is no afterlife, guys. That's one thing we have to respect. That's just the way it is at the moment. So if there was an afterlife, how will we look at it? And that's how I go into most of my information when I talk about different topics or when I do my talks. It's almost like a disclaimer. It's like, I'm not a psychologist, but hey, here's some information about mental health. Like it's literally a bit like that kind of stuff. It's literally this kind of thing. Like we've got to respect this is where it is. There is that science says no afterlife. Okay, that's where it's at. But if there was one, how will we look at it? What would you do if someone passed over and could come back? How would it work? And this kind of stuff. And then we go down that wonderful rabbit warren. So that's
a great thought experiment. I love that. Like, how would we look at it? That's not a question we usually get. Someone should ask that. Chat room.
Over there.
Let's see. We have Rich Whiteley. Are there any YouTube videos out there that you believe prove the existence of ghosts?
No.
No. I would not trust YouTube for that kind of stuff. Like YouTube is great. It's that. Oh man, what is it? It's like that seesaw or teeter totter at a playground. It's good and bad. Like it's fun when you're on it in the beginning and you're laughing and stuff. But then, something goes wrong because the other kid usually thinks, oh, it'd be funny if I just slip off real quick. And then boom, you go and knock your head open. So it's back and forth. There's a lot of information on YouTube. I mean, I did, again, another, like we talked for like 20 minutes before we actually started the show, but like I converted this camera into a full spectrum camera. And I did so because I was watching a video on YouTube. And it was just a step-by-step with an annoying background music that I had to turn the volume down. But for 16 minutes, I followed exactly what the guy did, and I successfully turned this into a full-spectrum camera, which is great. I'm happy about it. But then you have, like, all of these videos, and I don't want to pick on somebody, but there's a certain country that a lot of videos come out that have a lot of ghost videos. And you guys know what I'm talking about. Like the little kid that looks in the mirror and then she turns away, but the reflection's still looking at her. There's a lot of videos out there, and it's bullshit. It's for entertainment. There's a lot for entertainment, and I just don't think YouTube is the proper media to promote your validated evidence for the afterlife. If you have really good evidence, you take it to scientists. You take it to a group that's going to say, hey, you take it to the Independent Investigations group and talk to them, because if it turns out you have something awesome, I mean, you'll get paid too, and you'll get it out there, and you'll have a skeptics group that's already looking at it. So that's my take on YouTube. I mean, I use it. We use it. Both of us use it to help instruct people. So there's a good side, because I'm totally putting us on the good side. And then there's a bad side where you have like all this fake crap that's everywhere. What do you think?
It's like it's the ghost app photo type thing as well, to step away from slightly from YouTube. There's not as often now. I think people have kind of gotten a bit sick and tired of it, but it's those pictures where someone has their phone open somewhere and someone goes and takes a photo or says, oh look, there's a ghost in there, and it's from this app that generates a ghostly image in there. And for years, and I'm talking like 4 years at least, every investigation group, definitely I would have known or know of in Australia, has definitely come across somebody in the public going, oh, look at this photo. Look at this photo. And you're like, but that's an app. No, it's not. No. My daughter sent it to me. She'd never do that. I'm like, oh, no. She wouldn't want to laugh at all. Like, you can clearly see it. And it was like the bane of our existence for so long. As I said, I don't think it's happening as often now. There were Facebook pages that actually literally had whole libraries of all the different apps and all the different images, because it got to the point where people were inundated. Right. So to me, it's like that same thing. It's like, oh, man, this does not make us look good. We're already up against it. This is not good. So I think sometimes YouTube can also fall into that category as well.
That's good. Yeah. All right. So we have James Hanley. Hi, guys. Do you have an assessment of the Bothell Hell House case? I don't know what that is. Do you know what that is?
The name is familiar, but I don't think I've actually done a lot of research on that at all. So I don't think I can actually comment on that.
It says, and additionally, have you read the report produced by Steve Mera and wait, I think I know what this is. Steve Mera and Don Phillips. If so, what do you make of the methodology and evidence? I believe this is the Washington Hell House.
Oh, I've heard of this.
What's his name? With the guy that had the burning Bibles that would show up. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I'm gonna look it up real quick just to make sure that I have the right case. I love having this whole pseudo studio that I can look up this stuff. Poltergeist of Washington State. Let me see if is that Keith Linder. Yes. So that's it. I do you want to comment first?
Well, I've not really looked into the case at all, so I'd be interested to find out what your brain says on it.
So the report that was proved, this is what really got me interested, because I had watched a lot of the videos that Keith Linder was putting out, and seeing I was picking up on little things here and there. I'm like, okay, camera placement, the angles, everything's done so that you could hide people or hide things. There's definitely hoaxing going on here. I can't prove it because I'm not there, but I'm pretty convinced that there is. I've actually spoken with Keith back and forth. That's a polite way of saying it. We've had disagreements on a lot of things. And he also had there were a few. I think there was two ladies that were from my area that went out there and lived in his house for like 2 or 3 weeks and did their own videos. And I recreated some of their videos showing exactly the same angles and how you could easily do it. And it was more like Bible pages that were turning by themselves. And it's really easy to do when you're close by and you're breathing. It's an old trick. If you ever watched James Randi, he was on a talk show where they were testing the psychic guy in the Kung Fu outfit. And he was blowing the phone book pages. Same concept.
Wow.
But as for the report from Steve Mera, and I think Don Phillips was like a psychic medium guy that carried a recorder around, and then Steve Mera was a alleged parapsychologist. I looked into him, and then Haley Stevens, she looked into him too. Like, she looked really deep, because I put his report after arguing. I'm sorry if I'm jumping around here. No. Arguing with Keith Linder, he sent me the basic report. So I had the report before it was refined and then published.
Wow.
So I ran it through a plagiarism app and found out that like 80% of it was plagiarized from different sources. Nothing was credited, nothing was cited. And it was just taken from here and there to explain lots of bullshit that didn't happen.
Wow.
So when that came out, Haley Stevens, actually, I mean, I love Haley. She's amazing. She dug deep and got really deep in his background and found out that his credentials were bullshit, that he was promoting credentials that were not legitimate. So, and that's it. Like his whole, I think he had a parapsychology school or institution that didn't exist. It only existed with him. So there's a lot there that we had to unpack, and that was a couple years ago. So that's my take on that. I think their methodology. His last question was, if so, what did you make of his methodology and evidence? I think both were horrible, just horrible. It was not scientific. It was not valid. It was pretty much, hey, we want to prove that there's a haunting here, and we want to be famous from it. That's the mentality that I got from it. So there, I totally dominate that question. Yeah,
love it. I just love the fact that there's an app that you can get that you can check with plagiarism. I'm thinking we're gonna have to swap notes later.
Oh yeah, I mean there's if you go out and look on Google, there's quite a few. You can actually use Google. There's Google Scholar that'll do it for you, and,
yes,
I used it a lot when I was doing when I was investigating Zach Bagans' new book that he had released, and that's how I found a lot of the plagiarized material. So love doing that stuff. Let's see. Gabriel, ask yourself how long you've been awake. Do you see something? Wait, what? I don't get that. Ask yourself how long you've been awake. Did you see something, or are you daydreaming? I don't know what Gabriel's talking about there. So I'm going to move on to the next. Let's see. What liquor are you drinking tonight? Well,
it's just water. It's just clearly see through. It's water.
It's tea. I don't know what you're talking about. Actually, today's unofficial sponsor is, I believe it's Captain Morgan 100 proof.
Oh, lovely.
So yeah, because I didn't know how long we were going to be quarantined, so I went for the let's get the tried and true.
I love it. People panic buying toilet paper and cleaning stuff and food. I'm sitting there going, oh, "Where's the gin?" I could have put up with this.
Yeah. I'd rather go with the. I lift the big bottles. I mean, I'm constantly down there like this.
Yeah, well, so, hey, it's all about in-house working out and exercises now because we're all self-isolating. So yeah, good on you, man. Keep fit.
We got Dave Schumacher. Dave always asks some good questions, so prepare yourself. Skeptics say we wouldn't character. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Skeptics say we shouldn't characterize the different types of ghosts and hauntings, while believers do. For instance, intelligent, residual, poltergeist, etc. Should we instead characterize the experience as opposed to the labeling of the type of ghost or haunting?
Oh, where have you been all my life? Honestly, that would be such better way of rolling out particular information of what happens to people, because we don't know if it's we can ask, like, obviously when I've been on investigations, it's a very common term because of those shows where people will say if it's intelligent or residual or a shadow person or anything like that. But yes, absolutely, we should definitely look at that, changing that and making it about the person's experience. Like that's a lot more founded as opposed to saying, oh, it's something, the D word, demonic, it's like, oh, come on, I think that's a fantastic idea. Sign me up.
Wow. There you go, Dave. You got a fan. That's all. I agree too. I mean, that's something I haven't really thought about, because I've always dealt with people categorizing. They approach me with a question, categorizing the what they have seen, the alleged ghost, not the experience. And I guess, when you really get into it, when we investigate what they're claiming, we are investigating the experience, not always, what they claim was there. Although sometimes, if it deals with video and photographs, yes, we're dealing with what might have physically been at the location. But yeah, if we're just going off of their anecdotes that they're providing us, you're dealing with an experience, not a actual phenomenon, a physical phenomenon. You're dealing with an experience, which is totally subjective, but you can at least categorize those. That's a great idea. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. Let's see. I like when people are having a conversation in the chat room. That's awesome. Paul Browning, who are you people? You, Paul. You know who the hell we are.
Ghosts right now.
Yeah. Dave's got another question. I'm trying to catch up. This is like, I love having you on because I have the most people and the most comments. I'm actually 56 comments behind. So I'm trying to catch up. I'm trying to differentiate between people having conversations amongst themselves and actually asking us questions. So Dick has another question. Do you think we should be conducting proof-oriented or process-oriented research, or both?
I'd say both. I think both is needed.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very sticky, but particularly, as I said, like hello, for obvious reasons. But I think still it's important to have both. Yeah. What do you reckon?
I think so too. I mean, and I think, like, I've known Dave for quite a few years now, and we've done some podcasts together. There's another podcast that we do called Casual Conversations that when we get, there's 5 of us, and when we actually can get all 5 of us together, we have a pretty good conversation. Cool. And we've talked about a similar topic before, because like I've seen a problem with the process. Like so many people have proof. Okay. I use a lot of air quotes, so everyone should just get used to that. Proof. And we look at the proof. Like I look at the photographs, I look at the videos. That's part of, what I usually do. That's a big part of my job in this hobby. There's the air quotes again. But I also look at the process of how they got to the conclusion of that photo is of a ghost, because the process is where a lot of problems take place. There's a lot of mistakes made in the process. And I think it's because of the TV shows. That's partly to blame. The TV shows demonstrate, ghost hunting, entertainment style. They don't show you how to imply or employ controls on your experiments. They don't tell you what variables to look out for. They don't tell you how the equipment actually works. They give you a general watered down description of it. And then people see that TV show, they see it over and over and over again, and it becomes ingrained, and they think, oh, well, I know exactly what this does because I've seen it on like 17 episodes of Ghost Adventures. So I know what it does. And the process is just, it falls apart. It totally falls apart because it's wrong. So your conclusion is wrong. So I think that's great. I think we should look at both. Because when you look at the proof and you give explanations for it, that's great. The person that you talk to can now go on to the next investigation and say, well, if I see a picture like that, I know what it is now. If you give them, it's like, oh man, if you teach them how to do the process correctly, better, they won't get that result that they've gotten before. They'll get better results.
That's it. It's, the proof is the science side of it, and the process is the investigating side of it. And you need both. You need both.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good.
Cool.
NDEs. Paul Browning just says NDE, near-death experiences. Mm-hmm. What do you think? I guess it's just a general,
well,
like NDA topic.
I don't know. It's a thing. It seems to be kind of in fashion. I think with the paranormal, we go through things that I call it in fashion. It's my female side of me coming out clearly. It's more like so in fashion it was demons for a while. Then it went into haunted objects, and I'm now starting to go seeing it's coming into NDEs, which is really interesting. I think that's becoming the next big thing. It goes into next big thing. And I've actually started to look into negative NDEs. I recently write very initial research into it because I find that fascinating, because it's not peace, love, and mung beans and unicorns and rainbows and kittens. People are being felt pain, smelling horrible smells. There's ones where people feel they're in oblivion. And what determines somebody going through that experience as opposed to someone going through something possibly positive? Is it the way they died? Is it how their body reacts once they're going into a state of death? Like the changes in the body, the chemicals and things like that, and the tunnel vision about when your body is in that state, it actually your retina and the tunnel vision that comes from that, and all this kind of thing. So it's just fascinating to me. Does belief play a part as well? So some people who feel they have negative NDEs will feel like they're at the gates of hell, but they're of Christian faith. But yet someone who might have a negative NDE who's atheist, may or have oblivion or something. You know, is your belief going to determine how that's going to happen? It's just like you say, it's a beautiful rabbit warren. But I'm actually looking more into the negative NDEs because I find that more interesting, and it's a lot harder to get information of how many people that have experienced that, because people aren't going to want to talk about it. And it's also something that's very difficult as well. You don't really want to sit there and put someone in a lab and try and recreate it, because it's kind of a bit of a moral issue as well. So,
ethical concerns? What?
Just slightly. So yeah, to me, I find negative NDEs more intriguing than your standard open up the door, hey presto, there's a light, come back. So yeah.
Cool, very cool. I haven't done much research. I've read about it. I've never really bought into it, but that's superficial because I haven't researched it. I would love to experience something like that. I mean, come out and float. I mean, I don't want to be on death's door. Let me clarify. I don't want to be dying in a hospital somewhere. I really don't like that part of it. So that's why I kind of stay away from the field research. But I would like to see. I would like to experience something like that to see, you know, what they're talking about. But that's as far as it goes with me. I really haven't done much research, so I can't really comment too much on it. But your answer was great. I like that that you're looking into it, and I also like that you have the same kind of mannerisms as we share the same kind of mannerisms, because I can tell like you have so much information that you want to put out that it starts over your brain overrides your mouth, and you're like, I want to talk at this. I love that. Awesome.
This is quicker than this, believe it or not. And it just goes, blah.
I have that problem a lot, especially when I'm drunk. So we have Jennifer. Jennifer asks, Beth, how do you feel about the TV shows and movies? Just getting opinions.
Oh, I think I still watch the TV shows at the moment because I'm involved in the paranormal community where people will comment about what stuff they see. So for me, being involved, I want to see what people are talking about, why they're talking about it. But I find that there are some shows that aren't well known that actually can be quite interesting, and they're actually a little bit more level-headed ones. I've been involved in programs as well in the past, a local independent one in Australia called a company called Moonlark Media. They're still running at the moment, and I've loved that because it's been completely up to the director and the producer making and following the program and creating the content, and it just feels more real. And so that kind of felt like we kind of had a bit more I guess you could say like it was what it was. It wasn't, nothing was made for entertainment purposes only. It was actually what was documented happening, you know, taking on a case. I mean, I was able to take on or look at, one of them was a program called Badlands, which was looking at murdered sites, and if there's anything from a haunting perspective after someone's been murdered, or a serial killer type style stuff. And there was one particular high profile case in New South Wales where I was actually able to talk to the local police station that took over that case that had been dealing with it. And at the time of the recording of that series, they hadn't found her body still yet because she was still missing. But 2 years later, they actually found bone fragments. So, but I was able to sit there and ask a policeman face to face, why have you looked at using the possibility of a medium, or why have you not? And it's those are the kinds of shows that I think can actually really benefit. But a lot of the mainstream we got, like it is just literally for entertainment purposes. So yeah, I think there are some decent ones, but you've really got to look for them. And then know people who like the same stuff you do. But majority of it can, you know, it is literally just throwing popcorn at the screen kind of stuff. But that's not what you do. So yeah, but it's fun anyway because you're burning calories. So yeah.
That's awesome. TV shows. I mean, I've preached this before. I don't like them for the most part. I like the older shows a little bit more. Like I've mentioned, like In Search of and Unsolved Mysteries. I love those because I grew up with them, so I have that nostalgia thing. But when I look at them now, I think, wow, they gave too much of an even airtime and usually more time to the belief rather than the science. So I was kind of upset by that. The newer shows, If I had popcorn, I would throw everything at the TV screen. I can usually take about 5 minutes of a TV show, unless I have to watch it for like an article or a review that I'm doing. I don't like seeing the equipment being used wrong, because it always happens. And I don't think I've come across any personally, and I haven't seen them all, so I don't want to say like all of them are bad. The ones that I have watched, I don't see any good signs. I see basically people walking around. They know the stories going in, regardless of what they tell you. They know the freaking stories. They know the history going in, and it seems like their activity that they quote unquote document is always geared to what they already know. So there's that big problem. There's a production problem, because it is for entertainment. If no one watches, it doesn't stay on. So they have to entertain you. So the jump scares, the sound bites, the intermission, what are they called? The little videos in between that they show. Just, I find it more comical at times. If I take it seriously, I get pissed off. So I don't watch them. For the movies are, I kind of take differently, because movies are meant to be entertainment only. That's it. They are meant to entertain you. The TV shows, although they, some of them have the disclaimer for entertainment purposes only, they are supposed to be docudramas. They're supposed to be real life reality shows. So that's my problem with it. They're passing on information that's usually bad. And a big problem is they fuck up the history. That's what really pisses me off, when they totally screw up the history. And they've been told, like, there's been episodes of The Conjuring House, the real life Conjuring House, where like Ghost Adventures did an episode there. They're semi-live. They're pre-recorded live show because they fucked up last year. They promoted some history that was completely false. Completely false. And not only did I have documents that prove that, but the information had been put out by me and like 3 or 4 other people in years past. So it was out there. They just didn't bother to include it, because the real history wasn't gory enough for the TV show. So that's when I have a problem with it. When it comes to movies, even based on real life events, I kind of look at movies as movies. I don't go out to the theater unless it's a big budget, like, Avengers Endgame. Yes, I'm in the theater because I want to. Star Wars, I'm in the theater.
Star Wars, I was going to say Star Wars.
Fuck yeah. I want to get out there. I want to experience it. I want to dress up. I have my Jedi outfit and I wear it with all the other nerds. I get into it. But other movies that are based on true stories, like Conjuring films and all that stuff, no. I'll wait until it comes on to the cable or the streaming service that I already pay for, and then I'll watch it. So there you go. I figured out how to get the comments up on the screen in front of me. So I'm like, woo! I'm like advancing in this. So I do have a question for you. It says, "Hey Beth, I wonder, can I add this? Oh, I can show it. What happened? Oh, there.
Look at that.
That is so cool.
We are so 21st century right now.
There you go. There's your question. I noticed in your bio you have taken classes from Rhine Institute. Have you any training with any other parapsychological research? Thank you.
Institutions. If so, how do they compare to Rhine? The closest, as far as institutions, no. As far as people who have parapsychological qualifications, yes. I've taken a course called Foundations of Parapsychology with Dr. Kieran O'Keefe. He was on Myth Haunted. He's here based in the UK. But as far, so I can't really compare it from an institution perspective as that. But I did find Lloyd Auerbach really good with his course. I found it very methodical. I found it, obviously, because I don't come from an academic background, that's my biggest passion, but also one thing I also try to, I guess you could say, let people know about, because just because I don't have an academic background doesn't mean I shouldn't be somebody who would not want to pick up a research paper and read it, because the information is very vital in that as well, because it's gone through so much to get to that particular point as well. So you have to respect that. But the way in which that information is presented is something that I'm a big passionate fan about. But that's a sidestep again. As you know, Kenny, I'm starting to do all that sort of stuff. But go back to the question, Beth, back to the question. Thank God you got still up. So yes, I can't really compare as far as institutions learning content, but I did find it really good. I found it very, very valuable in that sense. And it was the first introduction to parapsychology from an academic level, and it was very well balanced as far as I could tell. So yeah, I look forward to taking the time to be able to look at doing the one in Edinburgh. I think it's Cloister University unit or parapsychology unit. I always say that. I'm worried that I'm probably actually saying it wrong, and I've insulted the entire unit by doing so. but again, that's quite a reputable educational institution for parapsychology, and I think that'll be my next one to go and do. But also I wanted to look at doing one at APA, which is the Australian Institute of Parapsychological Research. They have an online course, and again, that is a very, very theory-based, very essay-based. Again, that I would be going up against it a little bit because I don't have a lot of experience and or background, but I'm not going to let that stop me. I just need to do a warm-up class on how to get to that point where I actually could go and do that particular course. Just because the information is presented in a certain way doesn't mean I should shy away from it for the rest of my life. So yeah,
right. That's great. I mean, I promote that, and Jennifer, who asked the question, that's Dave's wife. So Dave is the one who asked you the great question about. Yeah. And Dave sends me papers all the time. And it's great because between me, him, and another guy, Tim Vickers, we have a discussion group that we go to, and we see papers. They post papers all the time, and it's actually fun. It has gotten fun. In the beginning, it's boring as shit to read a scientific paper, an academic paper. It's horrible because it's so detailed and so involved. But as you grow and learn what's going on and how the format is, you understand, okay, this is all important because I'm not just reading the abstract and the conclusion. I'm getting all the information, the details in between, the methodology, what they did, what they found, the variables that they covered, everything. And it's just, you realize how in-depth the academic investigation of something is. And I love that. So great question. I love this software. I was so happy. Let's see. I was like, oh wait, it says comments over here. I click, oh, there's all the comments. And what happens when I go over them? It says show. Wow. So, all right. So we have, let's see, Mindy. I'm going to put that up because we're special. Mindy, we had a picnic a few days ago in a cemetery. We knew we were 6 feet away from everyone then. Haha. But had to explain to our 5-year-old what the big stones were for. Without delving too deep into religion, if you don't want to, how would you explain that? Okay. It took me a second to realize, like, the big stones. Okay. Wow. That's not really a paranormal question, but it's more of a. Go ahead. Yeah,
for me, it's how to approach death and approaching life and ending of life to little ones. So it's taking that angle of it, of course, clearly. So it's like, some people like to, once someone has passed over and someone has died, we'd like to have a spot there that's special for them. And, some people do it in different ways. And this is one way that some people like to wish that when they die, that they have something special for other people to go to, and kind of taking it from that angle, I would imagine. But yeah, it is difficult because, when it depends how, sort of obviously with the 5-year-old, you're very observant, wondering what the big stones are, and sort of, it's hard to try and be as, I guess you could say, diplomatic as possible when it comes to different faiths. My mum, when my sister and I were growing up, never had us into a religion at all, if that could make sense. She said, I think at one point someone had said, aren't they going to have godparents or something? And my mum said, no, they're not going to have any religious background whatsoever growing up, none. But when you get old enough, she said to me, then you can pick what you want, because then you can learn. So I think I've taken that for myself as being a very good way. And I think, ironically, that's helped me a lot in what I do now, because I can be so blank. You were saying before, Kenny, about not having a belief. I think not having a religious belief and taking that into an investigation. I'm such a blank canvas. I kind of almost feel like I can weave between all different types of worlds and have such a wonderful respect for all different faiths and different beliefs about how people pass away and how they wish to see what the afterlife is like. I mean, last month I was in Marrakesh, and the tour group had wandered off, and I was one of the last people off the bus, and I sort of leaned over to the guy and so this might be like a weird question, but what's your thoughts on the afterlife? So, just getting a bit, while I can. So it's finding out from that perspective, and I don't feel like I'm caged in because I have a particular belief that may be against another particular religious belief. So that's a little bit of extra there. So yeah.
I think the more I think about it, like I've always had this idea, and it's for years, like it's a marker. It's like a little monument to a person that used to be with us and is no longer with us. And that can be difficult right there, because if you're dealing with a 5-year-old, any little kid is like, what do you mean not with us? Where are they? And then you have to get into some kind of explanation for an afterlife. And I usually would just approach it as, well, they're not here with us anymore. I don't know where they are. And there's a lot of people that have different ideas, because I don't like beliefs, different ideas of where, we might go or might not go. And when you're old enough, we'll start looking into it. Like that's what we did with my son. We didn't raise him any kind of religion. It was basically, hey, if you're interested, we can look up the different religions and we can go through them one by one. We'll go through them with you, and I'll give you my honest opinion about the good and the bad, and you can decide for what you want when you're old enough. But I think for the big stones, the headstones, the most important thing, not besides the name, is the little dash. Like it has a birth date, it has a death date, but that's not your life. And for me, like that little dash in between, that's your life. That's what you've done. That's what you've accomplished, who you've known, what you did, what you've learned. Everything is in that little dash, and it doesn't get enough recognition. So I emphasize that. Like, if you're interested in this person, go look them up. You can pretty much find almost anybody online now.
Yeah. So
go look them up. But I guess they're probably going in the direction of about the afterlife. What do you explain to a kid about the afterlife? And that's basically my answer. Like, I don't know. I haven't been there yet. You can look at other people's ideas, and then you can form your own idea and let me know if it pans out. But not until after I go. Let me go first, and then we're good. So what else we got? I love this. We're over an hour, which is good. Are you good for time?
I'm totally fine. It's not like I've got anything else. We're all self-isolating here in London. It's on lockdown, man.
I don't know if you had like another podcast to do or anything like that. So.
Oh yeah, yes. My PA who's over in the corner there is, obviously, hello, booking in. Yeah, plenty of time.
So this was one I probably can't answer too much, but there you go. How would you view the work, investigations, and contribution of British psychical researcher Harry Price?
Ooh. I've only done it's been years since I've actually looked at some of his work and research in particular. I was disappeared. Oh my gosh. Oh, there you go. There we go.
I have one of his books.
Fantastic.
Go ahead.
You go first.
Well, mine will be quick. I don't know too much. I've read about him again when I've had to. I know of him. I've read some of his work, I believe with the Borley Rectory. And I know that he pretty much had the first investigation kit for ghost hunters. He developed it, which was a primitive kit, but it was a kit for the time, which was good. It's what they had. Do I think his investigations were thorough? I don't know. From what I've read, I think he tended to be a little biased on the side of believing that there is something out there. I can't remember how he worked with psychics. I have this feeling that he did work with psychics. I'm not sure, but that's pretty much it. I honestly don't know too much more about him. Like I said, I've read up on him a little bit, like here and there, in my vast collection of books. I've come across them. I have several books. I haven't actually read this. I have it, but more of a reference material. So I don't know too much about him, and I apologize that I don't know too much about him. So that puts a spotlight on you.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you. To be honest, actually, I'm fairly similar on this ground with you. I know it's disgraceful considering that I've been involved actively in the paranormal field and investigating possible claims for 12 years, and I've only got a very baseline knowledge of Harry Price. But obviously, you say his name, and 99.99% of people in the paranormal will know, of that particular person and who he is. But you've actually inspired me from your question for me to actually do a proper research over the next couple of weeks here in lockdown, and actually delve down a bit more into him as an individual and as a researcher. I think that'd be something that I'm actually think, you know what, that'll be, I'll put that on my list for something to do. So thank you for that, James. Awesome. You've actually given me something to, because I've actually been thinking about not just obviously catching up on all the paranormal stuff that I've got going as far as social media and stuff like that, but I think it's also good to take some time out to actually do some other learning, and I wanted to look at a particular individual. So I'm like, awesome, mate, you've just given me my person.
That really goes along with a lot. Like I know it's kind of a weird thing. You think of all the pioneers in the, I hate saying field because I don't know if I consider it a field or not, but the pioneers that we grew up with, and like Harry Price is definitely one of them. But there's other people, and I guess it depends on your background, your interest, who you really think of. Like I've talked to some groups that are like, well, Jason Halls, he started the ghost hunting thing. And I'm like, bam, on the top of the head. Like, wow, no, there were plenty of people. And I like to read up on them. I do read up on them, and I have I am familiar with them, but I don't know their life story. I don't know everything they've done. I don't know all the details. So, I mean, that's, and like you, this is a good opportunity. Like I have time, so I might as well start reading this book and get through it. So yeah, let's see. Oh, we got people. Wow. Look at this. Saying hello from Germany.
Oh, wow. Hi, Natalie.
That's awesome. We got Colorado Springs. I love putting the comments up. Cool. What else we got? More from Germany.
Oh, wow, cool.
Baggins in this bullshit. Okay, I just wanted to put that up because I hate it. I don't like bagging.
Yeah, I just get this funny feeling you have such a love.
There's my wife. She's downstairs.
Oh, hey, Donna.
Let's see. So I'm not even reading these before I put it up. So I'm interested in your opinion on the value of a solo investigation as a completely secured location. Do you feel being alone could be conducive to activity? Do you want to shoot for it? Who goes first?
I'll go first round of that.
Okay.
Really cool question there. There's two aspects to this particular question that I'll address, and I'm not sure if I'll go with it anyway. So interesting opinion, the value of solo investigation at a completely secure location. Okay, I consider myself what they say an independent paranormal investigator, and I've been one for probably about 7 years now. I like the fact that I can be independent. I like the fact that I can work with other groups. A lot of people, when I originally started to do this, suddenly thought that it meant that I actually just break into locations on my own and sit in the dark and risk my life. And that was, of course, not the case at all. So it depends, obviously, when you say your opinion on the value of solo investigations. I know that you probably didn't mean it quite in that way, but I wanted to at least bring that part in, is the fact that I really enjoy being an independent investigator, and the fact that you can actually be one. You don't actually have to be part of a team, and you can do it safely. I don't go on investigations on my own. I actually always go with somebody. So that's one thing. But a sidestep from that, a solo, it's funny because I know the angle you're coming from with this. A lot of investigators tend to find that they tend to experience more when they are less people in a group or less people in a room, whether or not that's because there's less distraction, people are more observant, or whether or not there's a change in energy, or the fact that whatever could be around, if there is around, feels more comfortable when not as intimidated by so many, like a crowd of people in one room. I've definitely noticed from my experience that the less people in a location, the more chance of possible activity happening, or things, more chance of things happening. So I do believe that in my experience over the years, I've found that that's been a big indication. Also, the frequency of investigating in a particular location as well. If it's a well-known haunted location in Australia, there's quite a few of them. So, people have gone to Monte Cristo Homestead and said, some people say it's Office Chops, Amityville Horror House, and some people say it's absolutely nothing. But in my experience, I do agree. Sometimes I've felt that the smaller the group, the more chance there's been of certain things that have been a little bit harder to explain when they've happened. Yeah. What about yourself?
Nice. Well, I'm pretty much in the same boat. I'm independent, I guess, as it were. I do, because I'm a skeptical investigator. Most people don't want to investigate me with me. So, that's not entirely true. I mean, there's a lot of groups that
party people.
Yeah, I mean, I've offered myself completely professionally. I've offered myself to groups, and some have taken me up on it. Mm-hmm. Some, accept me with open arms, which is great because they love to hear the opinions that I bring. Mm-hmm. Other groups will shy away. They're like, I'll talk to them. I'm friendly with them. And when it's like, oh, you're going to this place, do you mind if I tag along? And it's like, oh, well, we're already at the max. Maybe if there's an opening, we'll call you. And they never call, which is cool. But a lot of the stuff that I do investigate, I investigate on my own. Same way, because I find it better. I can work at my own pace. I can look at the things that I want to look at and spend the time on the things experimenting that I want to experiment on, which is much better suited for me being there by myself than me being there with like 10 or 20 other people. So I've gone on those kind of ghost hunts. I still go along on it with groups with a lot of people, and I find it's really it backfires on them, I think, because there's so many people going around. There is no order, even though they claim that there is order and a schedule and a pattern to what they're doing. There is not. It's just sitting in the corner and watching some groups work. You see that right away. Yeah. So I do have, like, this question is really good, but I can't help but looking at the completely secured location part. Like, how do you verify that? How do you verify something is completely secured?
If you're solo as well.
Yeah, if you're by yourself, you don't know what's going on in other parts of the building. You don't know if there's animals getting in and roaming around, if it's like an old place that's abandoned. You don't know if there's homeless people straggling around, because I've come across that, where you think it's secure, you think you're the only one there, and then you come across somebody when you turn a corner. I did that when I was doing urban exploring, back in my younger days. I would come up on people like, I don't want to call them bums, homeless people. I almost slept there. That was gross. Homeless people that were just living in these old homes, and I would come across them. So being completely secured, I don't know if that's possible, especially if you're by yourself. And do you feel that it's better for activity? I can go either way with that, because one, you're alone. So if something happens, if you hear a noise or you see like a shadow or a shape down a long hallway that's moved, by the time you get there, it may be gone. It may have been an animal. It may be something from outside, like a random car that drove up a driveway or something that shined their lights in and it created shadows, this and that. So there's a lot of things that could look like activity that isn't, because it does have explanations to it. You just didn't get there in time. So I don't think it's better for activity. I think there's like, and I'm also talking about a place that's big enough. Like, I wouldn't go to an abandoned asylum by myself and say, oh, I have all 16 floors and 3.5 miles worth of building here that I'm going to be by myself. That's not going to happen. We're talking like a small private residence where I've talked to the owners for quite some time and came in to look at certain things specifically. And that's what I do when I investigate. I have certain claims. I don't just go in cold, like, okay, what's going on? Months ahead of time, I already know exactly what they're claiming happens. and I've thought about it and I've worked it out, and then I can go in there and specifically attack those claims to see if something's going on, or what's the cause of it. So I don't do the typical ghost hunt where and I say typical because it's like you think of, you go in there, you turn the lights out, you're there for 4 or 5 hours, you put recorders up, you put your DVR system, this and that, and you sit there and talk to the dark for a few hours. I don't do that. I go strictly for what is being claimed, and then if I find the cause, I document it, tell them what it is. If I don't find the cause, I document what I did find, and I will come back later.
Yeah.
So, great question, though. Good question. Let's see what else we got. We got a couple more. Let's see. Poltergeists. Ignoring fraud. I like that. Would you accept the phenomenon really does happen? As in objects moving on their own, things being thrown, fires starting on their own, etc., and requires further investigation. So, I'll go first. I think I don't consider poltergeists a real phenomenon. The cases that I've seen, that I've read up on, it usually turns out to be somebody playing tricks. The Enfield poltergeist is a famous case, where when you put the pictures of the girl, levitating from the bed, when you put them in sequence, it's obvious that she's jumping. There's nothing paranormal going on there. All this other stuff, whenever I've come across a claim where something, might be a poltergeist because things are moving or being thrown around, the videos that are presented as proof are pretty much things on the edge of a shelf and they happen to fall because people are walking around. I haven't seen any evidence that suggests there was some other force working on it. But saying that, I want to make it clear that I think every case is unique. Every case deserves to be investigated. I'm not going to disregard or toss out of hand something because I'm thinking, well, it's probably just you. Wait, you have a teenage girl? That's probably the reason. You have a mischievous boy? That's probably the reason. I'm not going to dismiss it like that. I might think that. I definitely will think that. But I will, again, take your claims in detail after I interview, and I will show up, if need be, and look at what's going on and see. I will investigate it. Yeah. And that's it. I don't think you should ever just dismiss something out of hand. Either you think the person is crazy or you think, it's probably an obvious hoax. If the person is dangerous, then yes, dismiss it and get out of it. But otherwise, I would keep going with it. So what do you think?
I think, and it's a great question because I've actually just done a book review. I think James probably already knows this, which is hence possibly the reason why he may have asked the question. I've actually just done a book review on a book that a long-time researcher here in the UK called John Fraser, called Poltergeists, and he explores what he calls the Poltergeist Syndrome and goes into the whole different types of ways in which it can be explained, what's really going on, the difficulties on how to actually investigate possible poltergeist cases, because it's obviously possible paranormal phenomena is spontaneous anyway, but often with poltergeist it can be so fleeting. By the time you get the right people there, in a couple of months the phenomena's almost stopped completely. So it's that kind of thing. And obviously looking at it from a historical perspective, so much happening from a folklore perspective. Maybe there were things that were happening that were what we consider today as poltergeist, but other faiths have called it something else, or other religions or other types of parts of history have called it something else as well. So I definitely think something is going on. Is it poltergeist? We don't know. Definitely think after reading this book, again, I love it. It's the rabbit warren. It's wonderful. We've got time for rabbit warrens. So I personally myself think there is a possibility for it actually happening. What's happening though, I don't know. I've been there where objects have moved on their own. I've been there in a room where chalk has flown across the room of an old schoolroom when nobody was near it. Like it had projection as well. What was that? There could be a normal scientific explanation for that we have not figured out. But until such time, I don't know what's going on. Is it the perfect storm? Is it because the right people at the right time, and the moon was this, and the furniture was doing this? I don't know, but something was happening in that moment.
The feng shui was in just the right position.
It could be. My beautiful spiritual mediumship friends would be like, "Yeah, feng shui." I'm like, well, whatever floats your boat. But maybe the feng shui. It could be spiritual feng shui that we just haven't figured out yet. It could be, or maybe there's a scientific feng shui that we haven't worked out yet. Maybe there's something like a law of Newton in there somewhere. We don't know. The mind is like a parachute. It works better when it's open. Okay, so let's look at it this way. So I definitely think there is something going on. Poltergeist, I think there's definitely potential for something. What it is, I don't know. After reading John's book, don't necessarily think it could possibly be something from an afterlife spiritual perspective, but I know that something is like I've personally experienced things that I have not been able to explain from a movement object perspective over the years. For me to not to completely discount it personally myself.
Interesting. Very cool. Awesome. Thanks, James. Appreciate that. We got a couple more questions. I love this. You might have to come on with me like once a month.
Sounds terrible. Just my arm. I sounds like James.
Let's see. What do we got here? We got Michelle. Michelle's a friend of mine. Love Michelle. She does the Sensi stuff. So it's like the little stuffed animals with the smelly stuff in the butts.
Everyone loves a good smelly butt.
I bought Stitch from the Disney film. Stitch, and I bring it everywhere, and I tell people, "Hey, sniff the butt. It smells good. Trust me." They all do. It's so weird. So, what is your take on the paranormal claims having a hypnotist that hypnotizes clients and takes them back to memories? Do you believe the hypnotist can input memories of experiences to match experiences that teams have?
Ooh.
So you're going first on this one.
Oh, yeah, I'll go first. Okay, all right. Okay, so your take on paranormal teams having a hypnotist that hypnotizes clients and takes them back to memories. Now, for me personally, the teams I've worked with over the last sort of 10-ish of years, I've not had any teams that have actually gone to a hypnotist. So I'm like, okay, that's a different angle to take. Obviously, for obvious reasons, some people shut down, and there's lots about the subconscious mind we don't know. So obviously, that's why hypnotists are there, to unlock those memories. So personally, for myself, I've not had one-on-one experience with teams that I've brought in a hypnotist. Do you believe a hypnotist can input memories of experiences to match experiences the teams have? It would depend what they've been told, I would think. If I was to do something like this, obviously there's lots of ethical reasons with it. Personally, myself, I personally myself wouldn't look at it as a tool to be able to get information from experiences if the person's not willing to speak about it. Even if they're willing to have an hypnotistic session, then I wouldn't go down that path. To me, that's not something I would look at as a possible viable way of investigation information. But it would depend on what the hypnotist has been told, I would think, whether or not they then actually have said, you go up to the hypnotist, this person says they think they've experienced this and this, say, for instance, I know a lot of people in the UFO community use a lot of hypnotists to be able to go back and help with their encounters that they feel that are quite buried in their minds. Again, it's a very, very grey area, and you really are looking at something from an ethical perspective. I think the subconscious mind is something that can be easily imprinted from something like this. But again, it would depend how you've done your investigation, where your ethical lines are, how much the hypnotist would actually know prior to going into having that particular session. So it's a very grey area. It's not something I would go forth and say it's okay with or encourage personally myself, because that's not something I personally would feel comfortable with. What about you, Seb?
Nice.
What about
that was good. Wow. So professional. I'm right there with you. I mean, besides the ethical concerns, which you absolutely covered, I've been interested in hypnotism since Stir of Echoes came out, the movie. I thought like, oh, wow. And it was still when I was a ghost hunter. So I was like, maybe this is going to work. Maybe this can happen. And I've tried at least twice where someone has tried to hypnotize me. Doesn't work.
Yeah.
And from what I've gathered, for the most part, it doesn't work unless you're highly suggestible and you're willing to believe. It's pretty much like, this is just my opinion, but I see it more as a belief system on the side of both the hypnotist and the hypnotee. Is that what you would call it? The person being hypnotized. If you believe that you can be hypnotized and you go along with it, you full in, balls deep, think that this can happen, then yeah, I think you can have suggestions planted that you'll follow. Whether you follow them because you were hypnotized and it's like more of a program thing, or you're following them because you want to fulfill that prediction, that's a whole nother topic to discuss. But I've seen it. I've seen shows. I've been part of a show. I was actually part of a hypnotist show where I got up on stage and they tried to hypnotize everyone, and I was kicked out immediately because I was laughing too hard. I felt bad, but I was laughing because of some of the things he wanted, us to do. But even the people that stayed up there that were, quote unquote hypnotized, you could see them smirking. So I don't believe that they were hypnotized. That said, when we go on to the next part of the question about inputting memories, you mentioned like UFO researchers use it a lot to look at abductees and see what their experiences were to get more details. And that would really, for me, it comes down to who the hypnotist is and how is the process conducted. Because now we get into the ethical concerns. Or is the hypnotist asking them leading questions? Are they giving descriptions that now the person that's kind of almost falling asleep is hearing these descriptions and starting to, imagine this stuff? And you can definitely, if you give me a description of an alien, I can picture it. So if I'm in maybe a drunken state, which is a lot, or if I'm very tired, I'm going to start imagining that. So I'm going to see it. And not only am I going to imagine what you're describing, I'm going to actually add details because I have a vivid imagination. I can come up with this shit. So I will give you more details than you give me. And then it's going to sound like I had an experience. So that's the problem I have with that. It's not, I haven't seen anything that proves conclusively that this is something that works, that hypnotizing somebody actually works. So I'm kind of left with that. I wouldn't even bother. You can do your little experiments if you want, as long as it's done properly and ethically. That's a big deal. But I don't think there's much to it. Good. Yeah. Okay. Next question. Awesome. I don't know. I didn't know if you were going to rebut something or like.
Oh no, I was going to say, like, because part of me is like, I just want to ask you about paranormal ethics, but then I think we don't have enough time.
We have all the time in the world.
That's right. Because
we can get into it. So this is from Jennifer asking if I have ever personally been present during a paranormal investigation where poltergeist phenomenon has presented itself. So for me, I guess for poltergeist phenomenon, that would be stuff getting thrown around, objects being thrown mysteriously. And I have been on cases like that. And I found that it was the people living there. There was one apartment that I went to. There were two renters, and it was one renter that was trying to get the other one out. So poltergeist activity ensued, and stuff was getting thrown around. But luckily, because not only my skeptical nature, but I watch a lot of forensic files and all that stuff and the sneaky shit. So holding a video camera in your hand, backwards while you're walking around, you tend to catch people as they pick up items and throw them.
Wow.
So I actually caught somebody throwing a bolt, like a 1/4-inch bolt, down a hallway, and it was like, oh, well, where'd this come from? And you review the tape and you see, oh, well, it came from your pocket. Like, what's going on? And it eventually came out, yes, that he was trying to get his roommate out because he didn't like him anymore. So that's just one example. And again, it's based on the fact that my definition of poltergeist is pretty much when objects are thrown around. So yeah, I've been on a case like that. Have you? I think you mentioned.
Yeah, I've had experiences, whether it's not there's been probably out of about the handful of cases I've really been in, and it's funny, a lot of people in the paranormal, I mentioned this in the ASSEP training weekend I went to a couple of weeks ago, which was really good, by the way. Of the handful of cases I've been on, people say, if you're a true investigator, you would have done 100 cases in your career. It's like, no, if you've done 5 cases in 10 years, you've actually done them properly. That's what I'm saying. Just like hypothetically, you've only done 5 cases? Like, man, they were the best 5 cases ever, because they went through the criteria enough for me to actually go investigate. And only one of them actually had reported poltergeist activity. In the time we investigated over those months, it was actually up to about 1.5 years in total, that we hadn't ourselves hadn't actually experienced it. I've actually, like I said before, I've actually experienced more poltergeist activity, what's considered poltergeist activity, in public locations and in historical locations in group scenarios. I've actually seen more poltergeist activity in that aspect, as opposed to actually taking on private and or residential cases. And like I said before, I've seen chalk fly off the wall. Ouija boards, that's whatever. That's a whole other topic in itself. And that's not even poltergeist. That's just object movement. And there's obviously lots of wonderful explanations for that. But I've seen a table move. I've seen a table walk. Mind you, people had their hands on the tops. It's not really poltergeist. It was more possibly PK, if you want to look at it that way. I have seen objects shift and change that I can't explain for myself. But it has actually, ironically, been more so in public locations as opposed to it being on a private case.
Okay. Now, have you seen, like, I'm gonna get into this. Have you actually seen, like, the object? Were you staring at the object and then saw it launch? Or was it something where you were going about your business and then you became aware of it when it was already airborne or hitting its destination?
That is option B.
Love it.
So okay. Yes, it was literally it was when I was in the particular, it was here, like, what was it, 10, 12 years ago. It's actually called the Ragged School Museum, and it was a school for kids who had ragged clothing, which basically meant the first public schooling here in the UK and the Victorian age, where Queen Victoria, it's like every child's going to have schooling. So there's a museum that's still there. They still run ghost investigation hunts and all sorts of stuff there. And that's when we were standing in one of the rooms, and someone said, "I'm not feeling so great," and someone's like, "Oh, okay, that's all right." And then literally, and that's because it was white, and obviously we're investigating in the dark. Surprise. That's when the chalk flew across the room. Okay. And at the same time, the picture on the other side actually slanted. In a very fast shift have moved. So again, that was my very early stages of investigating. I wish I could go back and actually have had the mind that I have now to go on, what's going on here? I'm on a public location with a tour, having paid money. Not to say that these people ever do that at all, but I just want to be able to have that opportunity again. And I was just in awe. I think I was just more in shock about having seen and witnessed something that I couldn't piece together, particularly. So yeah.
Cool. All right. Let's see what else we got.
Wow,
cool. Gabriel, nice picture.
Hey, I'll take that.
I look at hypnotism as the same as near-death experiences, drug-induced spirit journeys, and sleep paralysis. You are in a very suggestible state and opening yourself up to creative mind to wander. Near-death experiences you're not asking for, but it's like waking from sleep and the dreams that you can have. Is it a dream, hypnotic suggestion, or a real memory that you captured? There's a lot of problems that I'm seeing with this. For one, I'm just going to jump in. These are completely different things. Near-death experiences is when you're dying, when your body's dying, your system is shutting down, your brain is shutting down. So you're going to have a lot of neurons firing, almost like a desperate attempt, because it's like, oh shit, we're dying. Drug-induced spirit journeys, I'm not sure exactly what they are, but I'm guessing you're fucked up. you're high as shit, and you think you have a spirit journey. I don't know exactly what you mean by that, but I'm just going with that. So that's a chemical-induced hallucination, if you will. That's induced by a chemical that you're introducing to your brain, your system. So that's different from near-death experience. And then sleep paralysis is when you are in that, you're not, I think you're in REM sleep,
yes,
and your body is starting to wake up.
Hypnopopia and hypnogognia. It's
yes.
either one or the other.
So
yes.
You go, when you sleep in a wave, pretty much. You go through, what's it, seven? I think it's 7 steps.
Yes.
I think. But as you're coming out of REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement, where you're dreaming, you're coming out of there, your body is paralyzed. It's a natural reaction so that you don't act out your dreams, because you would have a lot of spouses pissed off if you could act out your dreams. And I would probably be dead. But it prevents you from acting out your dreams. Something goes wrong during sleep paralysis, and when your body is supposed to get that signal to start waking up, start moving again, it doesn't get that signal. So you're still trapped in the dream state. You cannot move. And people have these lucid dreams where they think, and my wife has experienced this a few times, where she thinks there's somebody in the room with us. And she freaks out. She panics because she can't move. She can't, wake me up. She can't sound the alarm. She can't do anything except lay there and experience it, which is a really frightening thing. So that's what I see. Problem with the first line. But yeah, I think if you're very suggestible, if you have any of these happen, if you're a suggestible kind of person, yes, you might interpret this definitely through a bias filter. Your beliefs, your religious beliefs, your personal beliefs, what people tell you when you confide in friends and family to, your experience, and they tell you what they think, you're going to apply these beliefs to that particular event and run with it. So what is it? A dream, hypnotic suggestion, a real memory? I mean, it becomes a real memory because you remember it the way you want. And memory is that's again, another topic that is for its own discussion. But memory has a problem because it's not always accurate. We fill in a lot of blanks. And as we retell a story over and over again, we fill in more details. It's just natural for us. So that's my take on it. I'm going to leave it up here because I could just barely. You look like Ziggy because you're like right there. What's your
I actually was about to say, what he said. Sorry, what he said. Literally, you literally just you kind of took the words out of my mouth. There we go. Ooh, he said about poking.
High five.
Wasn't it? High five. There we go. Through the wall. We've crossed the Atlantic Ocean. Is it Atlantic? Oh my gosh, I should know my geography. Terrible, isn't it?
Atlantic.
But that's exactly how I would have seen it as well myself. That's exactly. There's lots of different things. NDEs are to me not quite the same. Obviously, what's happening in your body is drug-induced spirit journeys or sleep paralysis. They're very chemically wise, very different things happening in the body. But I can see what your point is as well. Like it's that suggestible subconscious thing going on where our bodies, when we get to a certain point, like obviously with hypnotism and when you're about to fall asleep. And the funny one thing about sleep paralysis is the fact that it's often something that's going to happen when you're going through a very stressful time in your life, because your body is not able to relax enough for you to actually go directly into your sleep state. So it's kind of faltering, and so much so also from when you're trying to wake up as well. And that's where the whole glitch comes in, where one part of you is awake, the other part of you is not, and that's when you kind of become that trapped sort of I'm now hallucinating, still in dream state, but my body's trying to wake up, and now it's starting to become a great big hot big mess. So it's a very interesting thing to witness. I've had it before in the past, and it's horrible and it's scary and it's very, very real. Anyone who's ever experienced it feels like, the push on the bed, the pressure, the faces, the sounds, and it smells as well. There's smells in there too. It's all your senses. It's not just audible and visual. It's everything. So
yeah, my wife experienced the first experience she had. She described it as we have a small dog who jumps up and sleeps in the bed with us, and she had this feeling like, oh, it felt like the dog had come in the room and jumped up on the side of the bed, and paws were up there like, hey, pick me up. I can't jump that high. Pick me up. And she wanted to get up to pick the dog up. And then she realized, I can feel the dog laying on my other side, laying against me. She could feel the heat, the pressure of the body and everything right there. And that's when she started to panic. Like, holy shit, there's something else in this room that should not be here. And I woke up because she was, for lack of a better word, whimpering. She was whimpering. She was not crying out. She wasn't like screaming. And it was like she was trying to. And I think that's how she described it, that she was trying to scream and nothing was coming out. And it really came out like a kind of thing, which laying next to her, I was like, what the fuck is that? What is going on here? Shut up.
This is the caring husband.
You live together for so long. You're like, shut up. Stop making noise. And I'm looking at her like, you're not awake. You're making these noises. And then it just looked like I got that feeling like, oh, she looks panicked. Oh, okay. Let me try and wake her up. I think I know what's going on. And I really got in trouble because I was like, oh, sleep paralysis. Oh, yes. This is it. I'm witnessing it firsthand. Yes. But I couldn't show that excitement because I didn't want to be too much of a dick. I already told her to shut up. Oh, man. So that was good. That was a good question. I like. Yeah, I'm not a great guy. Yes, I am. All right. So, big question. Oh, that covers both of us. James has gotten some good questions. Yes.
James, a very, very knowledgeable person. Yes.
Great. He's going to make me look dumb. I've not read nearly enough about the phenomenon relating to phone calls from the dead. This is another interesting area of human experience. Have you guys looked into this area at all? Also, there was a case in the UK in the 80s about two entities communicating via a home computer, one from the past and one from the future, and documented in a book, The Vertical Plane. I don't know if I have that. It sometimes seems like these unknown forces can keep up with technology. Wow. I'm going to put this away. No, I'm not. I'm going to put it up because see us. I haven't personally read into this a lot. I know this was big in like the early 90s, I think. There was a big surge of these kind of cases because people were like, oh, they're calling me on the old phones that were the corded phones that we all had.
Yes.
Yes, I'm going to put this away so I can see it. But yes. So yeah, a lot of the calls came in on corded calls. And then when cell phones started coming in like really big and everyone had their flip phones, I was getting stories about this happening as well. But I've never actually heard a recording of it. Like I've never heard a recording that was taken of a allegedly dead person that was calling after they had died. So I think this is more, for me, I think it was more of an urban legend that really took off and has evolved over time with new technology, as a lot of folklore has. It just evolved. So we had phones and then the internet. I mean, everyone's like, oh, well, now I'm getting emails from the dead. Social media. I know there's been stories. I can't cite them offhand, but I know there's been stories where Facebook accounts from people that have died days or weeks before have suddenly become active. And most people disregard the fact that family members or friends could actually access them at times and post as them. But, this is a urban legend that has developed. That's how I see it. I don't know if that's, on point, but that's the extent of my knowledge of that. So what do you think?
For me, I've not personally dealt with a case where there's been a phone call from the dead. Obviously, as we all know and have spoken about, it is a phenomenon that people have spoken about. The closest I've had was a case where I there was a guy that would wake up in the morning and he would have random messages that had been typed out on his phone. And it was the one where it was the predictive text ones. Okay. So it's almost like someone's pressing a couple and it came, but it was coming up with all sorts of random stuff on his phone. So he'd wake up with these messages like the government's going to try and take you down, all this kind of stuff, all this, literally on his phone. And I said to him, take photos of it. Are you sure no one's in your room? All this kind of stuff. And we never really got to the bottom of it. I put it down to possible a faulty phone in the fact that something where, you know, like you press number 3 too many times and it comes, right. You know, it's almost like those memes like, you know, tell me the funniest thing that you've done today by selecting the third word that's on your phone or something like that, you know, that kind of thing. But I think obviously is quite, you know, thinking that obviously and believing that the fact it could possibly be something from the other side. But as far as like phone calls from the dead, the closest I've had was somebody's talking to me about an experience where it was actually more so white noise as opposed to a voice coming through. That has been more common for me over my experience, where people have actually reported anything. It's like, well, you know, the phone rang and picked up white noise, just white noise, like no, that's it. And I'm like, well, there could be. I mean, as we know now, it's like that could be, that's pretty explainable in that regard. But when people obviously, then again, you need to look at the, like I said, inside job or outside job. Inside job, what's going on? Is that person going through something as a grieving process? Has somebody recently passed? Are they looking for answers? Outside job. Okay, so what's happening with the phone? What's happening with the environment? What's happening with the, you know, all the technology. So you pull it apart that way and then and find those answers. But yeah, really, that was a really, like you said, it's been a very interesting topic for people who have had this particular experience, as particularly if it's a voice that's very familiar. But then again, our brains are very susceptible.
Right. I mean, I can recall back to when spirit photography became popular, and people were seeing their dead relatives in these double exposed pictures. But sometimes it wasn't even their dead relatives; it was just a blurry picture of someone that kind of looked like them. And because of the grief, they were quick to say, yes, you know, I think that's my mom. That's my sister. You know, this is my husband, this and that. And it really wasn't, but they were in that mind frame, that frame of mind frame, where they were in mourning. They had lost somebody and they really wanted some kind of sign. And that was it. And I usually use that argument with modern day psychics, who do a lot of cold reading and throw out like a lot of general statements. You know, if something hits close to home for someone that had recently lost somebody, it's like they latch onto it. And I understand why, but I also don't like it because it's still, to me, it's lying. But for the family, it's like, okay, you know, like that sounds like him, or, you know, so I'm going to go with it. Good question though. That was good. Dave Schumacher is back. What's he say? Read Poltergeist by Gordon Cornwell. More than just objects, movement and cluster analysis shows 2 classes: poltergeist and hauntings. Interesting data.
Love it. Keep that up there. Write it down and keep that there, because I'm actually going to take a photo of that on my phone. So here I've got my phone. I'm actually taking a photo of that message on my phone. That's the best, because that would be great, because I'm, like I said, I'm really starting to get into it from the book that I read recently. So thank you very much for that, Dave. I really appreciate that.
Awesome. And let's see what else we got here. We got Moon Joey. Moon, your name's Moon? That is cool. I like that. I've never met somebody that was named Moon. So do either of you have experience with examining alleged vocal tone EVPs with acoustic spectrogram analysis for clues of human vocal phonetics, such as F0, F1, F2 formats? I'm going to say I don't know what they are. I don't know what the F0, 1, 2 formats are. So I'm gonna put you in the spotlight and see if you know anything about this.
Thanks for that, mate. So, Moon, you obviously really you've the word, it starts with an S, and the word escapes me, and I can't. I'm so annoyed that I can't actually remember the actual full word of it. It's like stenograph or something along the lines of that particular wording, so apologies. But Goldwave, which is an audio analysis software, actually is able to analyze audio in the sense of whether something has come from your voice box or not. And it's a big thing that I've been working on as well on the side. Ooh, so something a bit exclusive there, about how to roll out training for investigators to actually use this software, because whenever you come across what you may consider a possible EVP, you might actually be able to run this particular software, which is free, mind you, and actually be able to see whether or not that sound is actually something that the software has detected has come from a vocal box as opposed to somewhere else. So I'm thinking, from what you've said there, Moon, that's possibly what you're talking about. Please, let me know if you haven't, or that's I've got it completely wrong. But spectrogram, actually, you know what? Spectrogram is probably what I was talking about. So as opposed to stenograph. So there you go. You've actually said there in front of me and said what it is. But it's spectrogram analysis, exactly. So it's being able to actually, and the one thing I like about spectrogram is it's a visual representation. It's not just an audible one. So you're actually seeing and you're matching patterns, just as we do with audio waves as well. So it's actually a really good way to be able to really knock out what has been said, because we can have all the recording equipment in the world, but sometimes there'll be something that will come up or we're not really sure what's come from that. Everything I've run through the spectrogram on Goldwave has actually come across as being a human voice so far. So for myself, I've not come across anything, but I'm not sure with your vocal phonetics such as F1 and F2 formats. I'm not sure with that. I think that's what the when the manual says, all the different types of ones. I mean, I usually start with vowels. Vowels are the most common sounds that we speak as humans. I will then have my team then say A, E, I, O, U. I will record that and then actually have that as like a visual library. And then I'll reference that whenever I run it through the spectrogram. So it's because if you do the whole library, because people don't talk about letters, you know what I mean? Oh, it's a B, it's a B, no, like it. So, you know, we use vowels more often. So I have had some experience in using that, but whatever I've run through the spectrogram, they've all come across as not being from, it's all been accounted for from a physical voice box.
That's awesome. I did not know all that, so I appreciate the question and the answer from both of you. That's really cool. I looked it up a little bit, so I'm going to bookmark it and get back to it later because it's interesting. I don't do much analysis with sounds. I don't do much with EVPs. I usually, when it comes up and I'm approached about it, it's usually like, okay, what kind of controls were in place? You know, how many people were there? What did you soundproof the room? Did you close it off? How many people were upstairs, downstairs? That's what I usually look at. So I never actually get to the sound itself, which is awesome. That was great. Thank you guys for both of that, because I learned a little bit something. That's nice. All right.
Bit of learning.
I'm learning. I'm getting learned. I'm getting
learned. Gonna hit you with some knowledge.
We're called space.
That's right. Such a good baby. Anyway.
My wife's chiming in. I would love to get calls from people who have passed. How awesome would it be if they could leave messages for us? I agree.
High five.
Who would you talk to? I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit.
I said high five 100%. I would agree. Your ladies, she makes a good point.
Yes.
It would be easy.
Nice. Who would I talk to? My grandfather, I was pretty close to my grandfather. He died when I was really young, so it'd be nice to hear from him, see how it's going, be like, hey, what's on the other side there? Can you give me any clues? Any heads up, little tips? What should I wear?
Do I look good in this outfit? And I was like, hey.
You guys like really look down at us while we're having sex and stuff, like you freaks.
I've had mediums. I've asked mediums. I was like, from the spirit world, like when it comes to just being human, like what happens if you're taking a dump? Like does something, no, serious. Like, what's it like on the other side? Because I'm about as psychic as my glasses case. I wouldn't know what it was like on the other side. If you're perceiving this, like, what does spirit think about this kind of, human bodily stuff? And they're like, oh, it's just normal. It's like, it is like picking up an object or whatever. They don't see any difference. It's just being human. Like, thank God for that. Because if spirit's around 24/7, day or night, there's probably somebody staring at me most of the time, and hopefully I get my good angle. But it's like, but it's a really interesting thought. So there you go.
Let's see. Dave's got another question. What type of control and baseline data would you recommend collecting? Kind of a loaded question for Kenny, especially with EMF data. Thanks, Dick. I mean, Dave.
What type of control and baseline data would you recommend collecting? Control, geez. All right. Gosh, I mean, obviously, like it's hard to say. It's kind of everything that you've mentioned before previously, Kenny, in the sense of where everybody was, what they were doing, how many people are there, how many people witnessed it, what did they witness, who's spoken to who since that time, has anyone crossed paths with the information that they've been able to discover, that kind of stuff. I think obviously for me that would be a beginning part of it. Baseline data, to me, I'd only look at EMF because there are some studies loosely based on the fact that it can affect a person, but it's environmental. A lot of the time I say to people who are investigating, like, you're using an EMF detector. Do you know what that's for? Yes, because, we have EMF, and once we die, energy doesn't die, it changes form. I'm like, yeah, but there's another law of thermodynamics which kind of overrides that.
What? Laws of thermo what?
The law of there's the second first and second law of thermodynamics. So when energy doesn't die, it changes form. Right. So a lot of investigators use EMF detectors based on that. So we have EMF, and once we die, that EMF's got to go somewhere. So when you have a detector, that means it could possibly be a dead person. But the thing is, though, if I stuck an EMF detector next to me, it ain't going off. So and we have bio EMF. We actually have it, but it is so minute. It is tiny. Your detection that you use now is not for the living now. How do you think it's going to be like when somebody passes over? Right. So for me to use an EMF detector would be more likely to detect really, really off the chops bloody EMF. And people go, oh, it was 4 milligauss. I'm like, dude, it's milligauss. Tiny. So it needs to be a decent amount for somebody to really kind of feel rattled, and that's when I would use an EMF detector. So sorry, I do digress. There you go. My brain's going in other directions. But so yes, I would take the baseline readings as definitely. I know it's anecdotal, but I would still use I take in witness testimony and experiences and things like that, and obviously what they've seen and where and who and all that kind of thing. And obviously really, really good interview process as well. I have a very strict interview process for me to be able to go into something that goes into the stage of investigation. It has to be along the lines of Amityville Horror House to get to that point. Not to say that's like because I only do it for thrill seeking. It's not the case at all. But most of the time, it's a lot of things, as you could speaking to a beautiful psychic man as yourself, skeptic man as yourself, psychic skeptic. There you go. It can be explainable. Like a lot of things can be explained. So for me to get to that point of an investigation, it's got to be stuff that I can't, and it needs me to be there to have a look at it further. So yeah. Good. That's my thing.
I don't know where he's going with this, saying it's a loaded question. I think he knows what I'm going to say. Because we've had this discussion many times. But I think, if you're gonna do a baseline readings, first, controls and baseline, two different things. They go together, but controls are in place in order to control the variables that you know of. So if you know there's EMF, you really need to control for EMF in the area that you're measuring. So, for instance, like you said, if you use an EMF meter, you have to block out any signals that might interfere with that meter. So a Faraday cage would probably be my number one go-to. A good, properly built Faraday cage, not the shit you buy on Amazon for a couple dollars that doesn't actually work. But because they block out a little bit of FM. Like I know the ones that I've dealt with other teams, these little Faraday bags, they don't block out AM signals. They don't block out radio frequencies from two-way radios. So they're really shitty. But I would use that with an EMF meter or like a recorder, an audio recorder. That's just the baseline for that. But going around an environment, I would say you want to get a baseline for every measurement that you can possibly think of for the environment. Sound, vibration, temperature, air pressure, everything that you could think of, and then monitor that for at least, at the minimum, 6 months, continuously for 6 months before you even start investigating something weird. I know it sounds like a lot, but that's really what you got to do, because you don't know what kind of spikes you're going to get. You don't know what weather changes, what human interaction, what cycles, some of the equipment that might be in there, like a heater or a freezer, air conditioning unit, whatever. You don't know what kind of cycles they're on. So it could have an effect on your data. So that's pretty much like for the baseline reading. And it's never going to happen. Like I see people go in. EMF is a really good example, because people use like the tri-field meters. They go in there and they hold it, and they're like, oh, well, I walked into this room, nothing happens. Well, guess what? The range on that is not the entire room. You need to actually like sit there. You need to have multiple units inside of one room and monitor that continuously to figure out what the baseline is for that. So there's so much involved, and it's probably a loaded question because Dave likes to get me fucking rattled and talking.
I like his Dave guy.
He's great. I love Dave. He's really good. And I mean, we've had debates and discussions so many times. But real good guy. I like talking to him. He actually follows up. Let's see. He said, let me get this out. And he follows up with regards to EMF data, check latest publications in Parapsychological Journal. Okay. In the binomial. I don't know what that word is. And then EMF control and baseline, we will need to discuss less work. And this is where it gets into. So this will be a discussion we'll have later.
Awesome.
That was a good question. Thanks,
cool.
Dave. I like that. Baselines are just, I can't stand seeing like, and TV shows are horrible for this because they go in and they spend like the first minute of the show, and I know it's edited for content and time, but they spend like 30 seconds to a minute walking through an area, literally walking into a room with a meter and then walking back out and saying, oh, I got the 4 milligauss. We were actually, me and Dave were talking about a show recently that the guy was going off because he was measuring a door frame that had 4 milligauss. I think it was 4 milligauss, and he was going crazy, like 4 milligauss, man, 4 milligauss. And then in a different angle, you see there's a light switch right behind him, like within a foot or so of his meter. Like, well, there's obviously wires going through the wall. Did you check that? And that's not something that comes up. It comes up most of the time in these shows. All right. What do we got? We got James. We're going to take a couple more. We're over 2 hours now. This is great. And we still have so I'm going to take the last, I think there's 2 questions here from James and Moon. I love Moon. And then I think we'll wrap it up. So, oh, wait, that's not it. There it is. Wait, where is it? That's the question I want. Beth, did you ever get to investigate Port Arthur Jail or Melbourne?
Port Arthur Jail, yep, or Melbourne jails, or any other Australian locations you found interesting? Oh, James, I definitely was able to investigate. Well, I see. Port Arthur is, you can only do ghost tours there unless you actually go through a paranormal team, of course. And I wasn't able to actually investigate Port Arthur. For those in Australia that obviously would know, and hopefully are watching this, even if it is the replay, know of the Port Arthur massacre, which unfortunately happened on my 18th birthday. And that was a horrible thing that happened in that location. So they're very, very I guess you could say sensitive with anybody doing anything possibly paranormal because something happened only a few years ago. with regards to the particular tragedy that happened there. So it's a very delicate situation now to be able to look at the possibility of investigating Port Arthur. But Port Arthur is in the it's a little small island south of Australia. We call it the map of Tasmania. So if those many men will know what that means. And it's this beautiful little island, and it's fabulous. And I've been there. I was only there only a year ago myself with a fabulous team called Tasmania's Most Haunted. And so I personally myself have not been able to investigate there. Melbourne Jail, I have been through it. I've walked through it. I actually haven't been able to investigate there. Again, it's funny in Australia when it comes to possibly, the public haunted locations that most are well known. A lot of locations are starting to get very funny about people trying to get in to do investigations after they close. I think a lot of people are realizing that not everybody who is in the paranormal is, I could say, in it for the right intent without being, I'm being as politically correct as possible.
That's nice.
Yeah, they got a different view on what they want to do, and business owners are now starting to see that, and they unfortunately, and also with the media, put us all in the same box. And just think that we're all going to be like that. So this makes it very difficult and it's becoming more difficult for investigation groups independently to go into these places. So you generally will have to go through a paranormal team group, which is not bad at all. But then, of course, you conform to what they need to do for the night, as opposed to having the free reign yourself. So of those particular places, no, there have been other locations. I have found it interesting. Of course, the most interesting one that I have to call it the undisclosed location, because the owners of this particular location have asked myself and other people to not speak of where it is. But it was in, at least I can say, in New South Wales, the state that I was in. And that's where I experienced probably the most possible active paranormally in any place in Australia, because I came here from the UK all raring to go from my beginning, my first couple of years of my paranormal investigating journey. I went into Australia thinking it's all going to be the same. And it's like, hello. It was nothing like it. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually now sitting in the dark doing nothing. Oh my God, this is what it's about. So I learned the hard way. So, but at the end of the day, it forced me to go, how much do you want to be interested in this? Because this is what it is going to be like. And and then again, of course, at the same time, that just, it was still there. Clearly, obviously still is as well. I've got ghost fairy lights on that side and all sort of stuff. And I've got ghost pajamas on and stuff. As you know, I'm still into it, sort of thinking 12 years on. But yeah, there are some great locations. A lot of people think Monte Cristo's haunted as all get out. I have not been there myself. It's almost like going, people say, you're in Australia. Have you been to Uluru, the Rock of Uluru? It's like, oh no, I haven't been there because everyone else has been there. So I'm kind of a bit like that sometimes in Australia. But there are a couple of good places to go to. The Rocks area, API, Australian Paranormal Phenomena Investigators. They run a lot of great tour groups, investigation nights as well. So if you're ever in New South Wales, go check them out. But as I said, if anyone who wants to go to Australia, you're not really sure where to start when it comes to paranormal investigating stuff, if you want to kind of have a bit of fun, let me know. I know some great teams and or people to go and check out. But yeah, there are some good places, mate, James. And as I said, once our borders all open and all this shitstorm flies over, we should all go and visit Australia.
I'm in. Let's go. Awesome. So I'll throw up the question from Moon again that I mistakenly put up earlier. But okay, would you agree that expecting a cold spot to be indicative of a spirit manifestation does violate the law of thermodynamics? Wow. Well, I think the problem is that cold spots are it depends on the cold spot. It really does, because some of them just come out of nowhere when you're out in a field and you feel like this cold area, and it's just the environment. Other times it's because I've been on a ghost hunt where literally two people were sitting on either end of a bench, a wooden bench, and they got up and someone came along from another room and felt the bench and said, "Oh my God, it's warm here, but it's cold here, and then it's warm again." And they would not, no matter how many times we told them, they were just sitting there. They didn't want to buy it. It was a cold spot. So therefore it was a ghost. I am not completely familiar with the laws of thermodynamics, so I don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like, oh, I'm a scientist, I know what the hell I'm talking about. But no, I don't. Just generally,
Hey,
no, cold spots do not. It's not a sign that there's a spirit manifestation. It's simply a difference in temperature. That's it. Materials, thermal expansion, and temperature as it flows across a material. Different materials have different flow rates. Therefore, if you can heat up a pan and still grab the handle a minute or so into heating up a pan on your stove. If you're sitting on a wooden bench, and you heat up that side, I can guarantee that the other side of the bench is not going to heat up for a long time, if ever, because it's still, not only are you acting on it as a heat source, which heat wants to naturally transfer to a colder spot, but there are other environmental issues, like the environment that you're in, the air that's in there is also acting on that end of the bench. So you're fighting. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my take on it. What do you think?
Well, there's 4 laws of thermodynamics, and one of them is the one that counteracts why people believe of bio-EMF is the fact that our bodies do lose energy once we pass, but it comes through heat. So when our bodies decompress and decompose, we actually we lose that. That's through the heating process. So that's how that happens. So when people say, energy doesn't die, it changes form, but it does change its form. It releases in heat, and we don't have that anymore. So I think that's possibly where Moon is coming from. So when he says, or she says, expecting a cold spot to be indicative of spirit manifestation, does that violate the laws of thermodynamics? Because a lot of people who feel they have something spiritual say, oh, it's a cold spot. It's like, well, if energy is releasing from a heat perspective once you die, then why are you getting a cold spot? So I think that's a really good, interesting way of looking at it, Moon. I think, again, people say that when they feel something spiritual, it's going to be a drop in temperature. Maybe we should start really looking as investigators to start saying, okay, what about the temperature rise? Maybe that's an indication as opposed to always a temperature drop. Maybe it's like an urban myth that we're always expecting the temperature to drop. So if there is a slight drop on it, we're already associating it with a spirit interaction. So there could be a little bit of that too. It's like almost like why do we always investigate at nighttime? Why don't we do it in the daytime? Okay, because it's quieter. Yeah, but then if spirits are around 24/7, like I said, you're watching you guys and watching me taking a dump, like, it's around all the time. Why not? Sort of thing. So. But yeah, it's a really, really good point. Really good point. Really great. I'm really glad you mentioned that.
That's good. I mean, cold is often associated through movies and TV and myth with death. Like you die, you get cold. Whenever you see movies where people think that they're being haunted, and they are in the movie, they get cold, and you see their breath freeze and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a cultural bias, I think, that affects us. That was good. Thank you, Moon. Oh wow. So we have 2 more questions. You still good?
Yeah, good.
All right. Let's get it up there. Jen says, when anyone experiences some type of anomalous phenomenon, no matter what they think it might be, what criteria needs to be present in order for skeptics to accept it as such? And what would skeptics need for this to be authentic and worth their time to research?
I'll make that. Yeah.
So I'm gonna look at the second question first. And I think a lot of claims are worth researching. I don't like to dismiss, and we touched on this earlier. I don't like to dismiss things out of hand. Sometimes I do. Admittedly, I do. When it's depending on the person that's presenting it to me. If they presented me like with a lot of hoaxes or just stupid shit over and over again, it's like basically I say it's time to do your own fucking research. Do it yourself. I'm not doing it for you. But I don't. Otherwise, I don't like to really dismiss anything out of hand. I like to investigate everything, every claim that's thrown at me. But as for the criteria that needs to be present in order for skeptics to accept it as such. So let me get this right. When anyone experiences some type of anomalous phenomenon, what criteria needs to be presented to accept it as such? As what? Like, I don't understand as genuine, as a experience. Because I mean, just seeing a shadow is an experience. It doesn't mean that ghosts exist. If you mean what criteria needs to be in place so that we accept like some kind of paranormal claim as actually paranormal, like from a ghost or a spirit or a demon or such, I guess it really goes back to science and repeatability. You know, we can't go off of someone's story, their impression or interpretation of what happened. We can look into the details and see if the details match up with what we find in the scene, depending on the claim. This is really broad, and I'm trying to narrow it down into one thing, but it's very broad because it really depends on the claim.
Your brain's doing like that, like mine.
Yeah, I'm going to I'm trying to like cattle shoot it into one answer. But repeatability is important, because if somebody has an experience and you can't reproduce it, you can't look at it, you can't measure it, you can't investigate it. You can only go off of the interpretation of that person that witnessed it. But if you could reproduce it, then obviously it would fall into the scientific method that we're used to and the controls about repeating the experiment, controlling the variables, and see if it does the same exact thing as was reported the first time. And then we start delving into, okay, what caused this? I like hearing it coming out of my mouth. I know it sounds general. It's really all over the place, but I think this is a very general kind of it's a wide general question that covers a lot of places. It goes back to I don't know if we mentioned it in the show or if it's one of the videos, because I was watching your videos earlier today, but you mentioned something like paranormal, like what's considered paranormal. That's a wide range. You know, what are you actually talking about in this specific instance? So yeah, I don't think I gave you a good answer or an answer that you were looking for, Jen. But I need good hard evidence. I need something more than just somebody telling me, and I will investigate it. I will go in and see what I find, and work from there. That's it. I'm going to end it right there. What's your take on it?
Well, not being someone who would identify herself as a skeptic per se, I think it's a great question because, you know, I think it's great where you're asking, you know, no matter what they think it may be, like what experiences do some anomalous phenomena, and you know what criteria needs to be present in order for a skeptic to accept it as such. I think a lot of investigators and people who identify themselves as investigators would want that because they're like, well, you know, anything I would put forward to a skeptic is never going to be good enough. It doesn't matter how great it's going to be. It doesn't matter what I'm going to do. It doesn't matter how awesome I feel this is going to be. A skeptic is never going to accept it as such. So I think from that angle, I think it's a really cool question because there are people who are out in the field. And I know you hate that saying, but I'm just going to say it anyway because it grinds your gears.
Pink is a strong word. I dislike it a lot.
It's slightly uncomfortable is what I usually say. That's the British way. Slightly uncomfortable word to use.
I like that.
And then what would skeptics need for this to be authentic and worth their time to research? Again, it's you know, skeptics or anyone who identifies themselves as a skeptic will consider themselves a person of science. So again, you've got to, instead of looking at it from just skeptical perspective, you need to look at it from a scientific one. And you've answered that yourself anyway, in the sense of, well, you know, that it's got to be repeatable, it's got to be data, it's got to be evidence, it's got to be something solidified there somewhere. And we're talking about anomalous phenomena, and so I mean, people experience it and it can be so intense, but in order for science to try and get its way in, it's such a tricky game. It's always going to be that. It's literally, like I say, it's chasing the dragon. It's trying to find a way to figure out, you know, a way to be able to pin this slime to the wall. And I'm happy to try and continue to pin slime to the wall. So that's you know, it's my journey.
That's so great question. Right there, trying to pin slime to the wall. That's awesome. I love that. That's great. All right, we got one more question so far from Steve Hummel.
Oh, bless Steve. I remember him very well.
So he has a question for both of us. That's great.
Cool.
Where's the most active place you visited? That's for you. And for me, is there any place you've where you visited that impressed you on the lines of potential paranormal activity. We never got to shoot the breeze over that topic when we were hanging out. So go ahead, you go first.
All right. So most active place I've investigated, or sorry, visited. So visited is different to investigated. Oh, good. So I've got a bit more a wider range here. For me, again, it was that same location that I spoke about that was undisclosed. And the reason why it was what I would have considered the most active, that was over a period of about 3 years, where we would go there and we knew the place was locked off, as much as one can be, but it was a remote part in New South Wales. And I had sonic ears. So for those who don't know, it just amplifies sound. It's literally like awesome. Yeah. Everything gets amplified. So you know, you can hear your stomach growls and all sorts of stuff going. You're like, oh, I can hear a curry. But anyway, so it's awesome. So cool. But exactly. But it was one of the things that I found was the most intriguing phenomenon in this particular location was hearing footsteps and someone pushing a trolley. And I heard the squeaking wheels of the trolley and the footsteps. And we know 100% we were the only people there, because it was an abandoned location and had been for about 14 years. So it's all locked off, all gated off, all that sort of thing. We know 100%. And I could hear this. And I'm like, someone's walking. But it was the footsteps. And that's one thing I loved and have loved in the time that I've investigated possible phenomena is I find footsteps so human. It's such a human. I find it more human than voice, because you don't know whether or not it's something that is there, left behind, or something is wanting to make its presence known, if that stuff actually is around. You know, it intrigues me. It's like, why am I hearing footsteps when we're all sitting quietly for the last probably half an hour, and hard shoe as well on the floor, and the wheeling of the trolley, and it was like this. And I was like, why am I hearing this in this? So again, I've got sonic ears. I'm in an extremely remote location, and I'm hearing this. And at the same time, this part of me is having bowel movements. The other part is absolutely I'm just loving it. So that to me was,
I'm hearing a lot of shit.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly. That's it. It's intriguing. It's like, why am I hearing this in a place like this? Are we expecting to hear this? Because to me at the time I wasn't sitting there going, I want to hear footsteps. Oh yeah, bring it on. No, it was nothing like that. It literally was something that happened spontaneously. People had claimed to had chairs pulled out from under them, being pushed, and all this is taken over stuff, which I take with a grain of salt. But to me, the most simple phenomena that I experienced was probably the most profound. So again, it was an undisclosed location, Steve, so I can't tell you what it is. Maybe behind closed doors when we go and visit the museum, when I go over there eventually, when all this stuff goes over. But yeah, that was to me one of the most interesting places in Australia that I've actually visited and had experienced.
Very cool. As for my question, is there any place where you visited that impressed you on the lines of potential para activity? No. There we go.
And we're done.
No, I mean, when it comes to paranormal activity, honestly, no. There's never been a place that really impressed me. There's always been places that interest me because of the history and for like the spooky stories, but other than that, no. There's never been any place that's interested in me or piqued my interest in saying like, oh, maybe something really is happening here. Mm-hmm. Of course, years ago, it would have been a different answer. I would have been like, yeah, this place and like Eastern State Penitentiary and this and that, because that's not too far from me. But otherwise, no. Yeah, no, it's like I can drive there in 20 minutes.
Whatever.
If you come to the States again, you come to Philly and I'll take you around.
You've seen this, everybody. This is now recorded.
That's cool. I'll take you to all the places. We can go to Eastern State Penitentiary. We can go to the Rocky statue at the Art Museum, because you have to do that. And we'll go to there's other places like White Hill Mansion. There's Bolton Mansion. All these places that are supposed to be haunted. So yeah, I can take you around, and I know most of the people that run them. So it's nice if we can call them up and say, hey,
you haven't pissed them off. Oh, awesome.
yeah, I have not pissed them off.
Yay. Okay, count me in then.
Oh, that's great. That's great. All right, I'm going to keep going as long as you're good. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, why not?
Get like 1 or 2 questions every now and then. So there you go. Cat Ward.
Oh, Cat.
Darling, I'm very late to this as I'm just woken up. Sorry. Quick question. Do you feel Schmiedler's sheep-goat effect comes into play with personal experiences? For example, do you feel hardcore skeptics are, through their nature, closed off to experiencing anomalous phenomenon? I had to look this up, to be honest. I had to look this up. I wasn't familiar with this. And the definition I found, that the quick definition is basically the term sheep-goat effect was coined by Gertrude Schmiedler, 1913 to 2009, professor of psychology at City University of New York. The definition has been extended to include sheep as those who believe that ESP exists as genuine phenomenon. Oh, wait, I got to get to the rest of the definition here. Oh, I screwed it up. Where is it? I screwed up. New York, participants experiments, either those who think ESP is possible under a given experimental condition, the sheep, or those who reject the possibility, the goats. The definition has been extended to include sheep as those who believe in ESP exists as genuine phenomenon, thus excluding goats from this belief. The sheep-goat effect refers to the significant paranormal performance difference between sheep and goats, not ghosts, goats. Whereby sheep tend to perform well in side tasks, scoring above mean chance expectation, whereas goats tend to perform poorly in side tasks, scoring at or below the mean. Wow, that's involved.
So,
go ahead.
A summary of that, if you wish, for me to condense. Basically, it means if you're a sheep, or basically, if you're going to go into an experiment and you're positive about the experience, then you're more than likely going to have more paranormal experiences. So basically, it's that whole slight thing. But at the same time, as a skeptic, if you're going into a location and you're going to say nothing's going to happen, then you're more than likely going to not have something happen to you. So that's what sheep-goat effect effectively is.
That's great. That's a much simpler thing than I read.
I told you I'm a translator. I told you this is what I do.
So do either of us feel that hardcore skeptics are, through their nature, closed off to experiencing anomalous phenomenon? That's a tricky question, because I mean, we've already established pretty much that science has not established that ghosts or paranormal phenomenon exists. So we're already starting off on a bad foot here. But for me, hardcore skeptics, I think, are the same, just the opposite end of a coin as hardcore believers. So hardcore skeptics, which I call cynics, are going to find a reason to debunk or dismiss everything. Just as I think that hardcore believers will find a reason to believe and accept anything. For me, I'm gonna speak personally, just for my opinion, is that yes, I'm skeptical. Yes, I'm some would call me hardcore skeptical, which is okay. But I'm open to it. I keep going to these events, like not only events where there's supposed to be haunted locations and there's a lot of activity, but I encourage friends of mine or associates that say they work with demonic entities or other entities or whatever to take me along with them, because I really do want to experience something. I don't know if I can actually convince anyone by just talking that's my intention, but that is my intention. I'm open to it. I'm ready to be proved wrong. Basically, show me something that's good that we can test, that we can get into and say, oh shit, this is real. This is really cool. But basically, I think, to answer your question, I think the hardcore skeptics, to me, cynics, yes, they even if it did exist, I think they would find a reason not to believe it. So,
100%.
Off to you.
I love it. Kat says, I wasn't meaning you, by the way. Oh, bless. I love the question. I know exactly where Kat's coming from with this, in the sense where it's almost like it's like you're saying. It's I love the attitude of I think belief comes into this as well. Like you say, you don't have belief, you have ideas. I think that kind of is a kind of shimmies on to this particular question with the sheep goat effect. And I think as and I've always said, being that shade of grey. Don't lean too much this way or don't lean too much this way. You're going to occasionally, but just be wary of it. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to be as open as you can be. Like you said, I'm open to this. Prove me. I'm open to the possibility. That is the best attitude to have with something that we still have absolutely no idea. I say personally for myself, with everything that's happening to people, we can't explain everything. That's why the paranormal. That's what makes it so awesome, is because we haven't got all the answers yet. So, but being aware of our beliefs going into this, studies where people are open to psychic experiences will then go do a Xenocard test, and they get higher scores than those who aren't. There are studies to say that you're already or predisposed in some way. How that works, we don't know. Is that a good thing or a bad thing either? Maybe you'll be a better psychic if you're already a believer and open-minded. Or does that mean that the fact that, it's the opposite, and there's all that kind of information regarding that too. So, yeah, fascinating stuff.
I do get that often. I mean, because I go to psychic fairs a lot, and I. Uh-oh.
Oh, you're good.
Okay. I sit with different psychics, mediums or whatnot, and usually they do a reading and it goes fine. Well, not really fine. I mean, they usually get everything wrong. But after we're done and maybe we talk a little bit, I don't talk to all of them, but we talk a little bit and they're like, oh, you're a skeptic. Oh, that's why it didn't work, because you're closed off to it. And I mean, the entire time that I'm sitting there, I'm thinking like, I have relatives in mind, and I'm thinking like, hey, if you're out there, if you're standing behind me, like they say you are, tell them this, tell them that, give me some kind of proof so I can say, shit, that really did happen. That really is this person or that person. So I'm really open to it, but usually because they find out that I'm skeptical, then that's the excuse for why something didn't work. And I'm not really trying to pick on psychics. That just popped into my head. So I use that as an example.
Sure. Just joking.
Whatever. Okay. So let's see. Steve says he doesn't have a question, I think. He just awesome. Agreed. Footsteps. My favorite sound here at the museum while working. I've been to the museum. It was fun. I am writing an article, Steve, about about going there, and then some of the things that we investigated some stuff. He was really nice. Steve's a really nice guy, and like he owns an oddities museum. That's what I call it, an oddities museum. But you would think like someone like him that owns a museum with all this stuff that is claimed to be haunted or cursed or freaky and stuff would not get along good with a guy that makes a living sometimes debunking stuff. But we actually got together. It was great. It was a great experience. He was open about everything. He didn't sugarcoat shit. He didn't make shit up. When I asked him questions directly about stuff, he gave me a direct answer, which is great. I love that kind of communication. Yeah. And I mean, even if I was like, oh, we figured out a mystery about a certain object, he didn't get mad, which is great. It's really great. I mean, he embraced it and he was like, oh shit, now we know. So that's the kind of attitude that I like seeing. Let's see. What do we got? Anthony Saletti. What's up, Tony? He's a local to me.
Awesome.
What are your thoughts on paratourism as funding source for historic sites?
Ooh, that's a double-edged sword there.
I agree.
It's a double-edged sword. Okay, so what side of the sword am I going to speak about first? Okay, so all right. Okay, so
that's why I carry a lightsaber, because there is no. I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, that lightsaber. Yeah, exactly. I knew I was doing it wrong.
Yep.
Why?
So go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
That's all right, mate. Okay, so there's the side of it. Clearly, historic sites have got to keep themselves going. They're going to want to look at alternative streams of revenue. So from that perspective, being able to make money at nighttime, when generally nighttime, where investigation groups and or events are going to want to utilize a location that has possible reports of paranormal activity. An event, if all signed from a legality perspective, are probably not going to say no, particularly if they're getting financially not compensated, but they're being paid for the time. Often there's staff there as well. Staff sometimes like to get involved as well. I've been there in the past. I think from that avenue, at least sometimes it gives a bit extra for a historic location to have that extra revenue. That can be good. I particularly now in this particular climate with the whole corona stuff going on, it's going to be very interesting to see how paranormal tour groups are going to be able to try and keep going, because I know some groups and companies are finding it very difficult at the moment, clearly because everything's shut down. For how long it's going to be, we don't know. So that's going to be affecting not just ghost tourism or paratourism, but also tourism in itself. So that's going to be a knock-on effect as well with investigation locations too. I don't know if the price is going to come down or it's going to go back up, or we don't know. It depends. Depends, because you can charge a fair bit because particularly ones that have been notable in programs as well. People want to go into them, and those locations will then put their pricing up because they can. There's demand. Right. Is that a bad thing? Yeah, there are some things that it's bad about that. It's like, well, it's why put your prices up? At the end of the day, sometimes these places may actually need that funding to be able to keep them going. So it's a real double-edged sword. It's like it's helping historical sites. It's helping people give some work at a time when they may not be working. But at the end of the day, sometimes locations can actually, what we say in England, take the mickey and literally just really abuse that particular opportunity with people that, in a particular location to be able to make money. It's almost like this, the extortion side of it sort of thing. So nice. It is a double-edged sword in that. That was my double-edged saber. So what's your one?
So let me whip out my lightsaber here and just.
I've heard that before.
So I'm kind of on both sides, just like you. There are some benefits to it, obviously, because the locations do need money. And I know here in the States, it's very hard for them to get grants and money for restoration, preservation, and to keep staff on in order to keep going. Unless it's a state-run facility, then it's very hard for the private sector that are trying to keep these historical places going for future generations. It's very hard for them to afford it. So I get it. I understand, like, having ghost tours. It's fun because the old school ghost tours, which this is what I like, is where you inject history. Yeah. Like, most of it is the history of the location. You get to learn about the battles or the people that served there or died there, or great events that happened there. You get to learn about that, and then they inject a small ghost story, which with each story, and you're like, oh, cool. They think, she's still here and she's still she's still doing this work, or this person is still walking his guard duty path, stuff like that. It's fun. It's pretty much harmless. On the other side of it, though, I think the paranormal tourism industry has gone psycho, for lack of a better word. I think they really just went over the top with it, because it was almost like the mediums of old, when they used to do seances. It started with the Fox sisters, and then everyone that wanted to do an act similar to that had to one up the people before them. So you saw like the evolution of the ghost tours, where it was not just a historian giving the tour. Now it was a ghost hunting team. And they inject now ghost hunting devices that they give out to their participants that you can use to detect ghosts. They encourage you to take pictures and any anomaly they want to post on their website. Then it moved to having like these ghost hunts where you pay to stay there, and they tell you stories, and they have celebrities come by and tell of their stories. And the problem that I have with that is that some of these, like with Fort Mifflin, there's a historic Revolutionary War fort, Civil War fort that's here in Philadelphia. It's called Fort Mifflin, and they have ghost tours. They have overnights. I love the place. Don't get me wrong. I love the place. But a while back, there was a television show that they promoted some stories about it, that they were common stories. They had been in print in several books before that. People have repeated on websites. And this TV show came out, and the person that was in charge at the time contacted me and said, I think that they got some stuff wrong. They didn't ask us about the history. They really embellished the history, and I would like you to look into it, which I did, and found out that a lot of the stories that had been associated with this fort for years and decades even were simply not true. There was no truth to them. There was details that were injected in order to make the story what it was. So I guess that's the problem I have when not only the history is wrong and it's promoted anyway, or you have a lot of these ghost hunters, and I'm sounding like a typical skeptic. These ghost hunters. I don't mean there are some ghost hunters that run these, and the para-celebrities that come around, and they teach, like they do a paranormal 101 thing where they teach you how to investigate, and it's often the wrong way to investigate. And that's what I have a problem with. They're charging people $50, $60, over $100 here in the States per person to come out to learn how to use an EMF meter by walking inside of a room, looking at the display, and then walking out. Stuff like that. So that's my double edge there. I get the history and supporting the historic location, but I don't like what the newer ones teach. I have a problem with that. Wow. I'll get off my pedestal now.
So, a side note to add to that. Often you'll find that people who attend the ones where there's been a celebrity will actually be there more because of the celebrity and less likely to find out how to use equipment. They'll probably would kind of have an idea from what they've seen on the program. Is probably more that. So, but I understand your frustration with it's like, well, the equipment's not being used as it should be, or in the way in which it's meant to, or in the sense of the reasons why. But more than likely, when people do attend these particular events, it's 99.9% of the time because of actually meeting that particular person and being able to speak to them and talk to them and sort of stuff. So yeah, but I can understand your frustration. I get that.
Yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from too. Like, yeah, the celebrity is the draw, not necessarily the place. And if the celebrity draws them out to the place, they will learn about the place and spend money at the place. So yeah, I get that. That's the whole marketing thing, and yeah, I get it. I still don't like what they teach.
Really?
They're just doing appearance, like, hey, I'm here. I'm signing autographs. Great. I don't bother with it. It's when I see in the description it says, "Hey, we're going to take 2 hours, and we're going to teach you how to investigate." That's when I get concerned. Like, great. What are they teaching these people? So cool. Let's see. We actually have people still hanging around. We're at like almost 3 hours. We're at 2 hours and 45 minutes right now.
We must be on like a semi-lockdown or something.
Oh my goodness. Steve Hummel. Let's see. Beth and Kenny. We did that one. Exactly. Scientific method. Yes, that's right, Kat. Let's see. What's Steve say? I'm just popping these up as I read them so you don't think I'm just ignoring. Can you see the comments? I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's even better. That's one thing with you, Kenny, and I felt comfortable with having my place here. Oh, thank you. Wow.
No, you're very professional in your sending mad respect, he says.
Thanks, Steve. We'll wait until my article comes out. Make sure you still like it.
Like I said, I'm happy to hang out with you with people that don't piss you off.
Stuff like that. When I get invited out, like for Steve, like I'm working on the article. Once I'm finished, I didn't tell him this yet, but I'll send him the article and say, hey, like this is going to explain some stuff, but if you have any real problems with it, we can talk about it and work it out. If you don't like what I said about something, we can work it out. Cause I don't want him getting pissed off at me. I want to keep it fair because it is a fun place to visit. I definitely want to. I want to visit. I want to go back there because there's other things we have to. West Virginia Penitentiary.
So good.
I toured that the next day after we visited the museum, and there's a few things I need to look into again. So I'll be back out there.
Good.
Let's see. What's Cat Ward? What are your thoughts on the work of people of Rupert? I don't know any of these people.
I have no idea, lovely lady.
Oh, you have such a polite way of saying that. I'm like, I don't have a clue. I don't know what you're talking about. You're like, oh, lovely lady. That was so nice. I will have to. You know what? I'll come back to that on the comments after the show because I don't know who those people are at all. I might after I look them up, but I don't know. Let's see. You're always welcome here. Thanks. Oh, Steve, I will say this. Let's see. What does he have? Prison here in town.
Ah, cool. Yeah. With this
prison. Agreed. Thought from the paranormal side, positive, negative. Okay. Yeah. Very nice. I like when people agree with us. That's good.
A bit.
Beth. Oh, Kat loves you. Look at that.
You do a great job, y'all. You're doing a great job.
We're trying. We're trying. I like this has turned out a lot better than I thought. I didn't know what to expect when we started this. I was like, oh, I hope like 5 people show up. And we got one question. I actually wrote down a bunch of topics just in case anybody wanted to ask us questions. Shameless pug. Yes. That's here's a question. Do you feel there's a difference between a ghost hunter and an investigator? Oh, yes.
You hear me? I'm joking. I want you to go first.
I know you do. You go first. Go ahead.
All right. Ghost hunter, thrill seeker, somebody who just wants to be able to experience, is enthusiastic, likes different topics, but a bit more just wants to just to enjoy the situation, enjoy the possibility of, finding their own journey with the afterlife and just kind of hanging out and having fun. They generally tend to now also get the bad rap a little bit, and I'm not putting everybody in the same category of those who will go out into places that they're probably not meant to, i.e. breaking in and stuff like that, or thrill seeking a little bit as well, like they're taking it to the next level. Not everybody who is considered a ghost hunter will do that, but there is certainly a breed of a particular type of people that would possibly be that end up doing that. Then, of course, there's...
Real quick. Keep talking. I'll be right back. I have to check on something, but I'll be right back.
Okay. I reckon he's going to the bathroom. But anyways... But anyway, so oh my gosh, everybody, he's not here. What are we going to do? Sorry, jokes. So no, seriously aside. As far as paranormal investigator, then I think obviously for me, that's what I would put myself in that category. And I say that now with him not here because he's probably going to absolutely trash the hell out of what paranormal investigators are. But jokes aside, obviously investigators are people who consider themselves to take themselves a lot more seriously about it. They investigate possible phenomena. They're more than likely or often can take on private or residential cases. That there's a lot more of a research side to it. I know Kat's definitely obviously into the research side of it as well, and really kind of delving into it. It's not just having an experience, because it's not about having an experience. It's about finding out what that experience is about. How did it actually happen? Ghost hunter people tend to be more about the whole, experience, is going out there thrill seeking. And I know, there are a lot of people in the media, whenever I've done interviews in the past, and I know in Australia, and I'm sure it's probably also across the world as well, where when you've done an interview, the journalist will often look at you as a ghost hunter, even if you are a paranormal investigator. That can be really annoying.
I'm here.
Because it's like, dude, there's a difference. So, yes. Oh, good. You're nice and empty.
Do you see what I'm drinking?
Awesome, mate. Awesome.
Good.
So, yes, I've given my definition, and now because obviously at this point in time, you don't know what that was. So I'd be very intrigued to find what your difference that you feel with ghost hunters and paranormal investigators.
I heard the beginning, so I'm kind of with you on that. Ghost hunters and paranormal investigators, I really see them as the same thing. Generally, they are two names. I think everyone started out as a ghost hunter, like in the 90s. That's when I started. So everyone was a ghost hunter. And then it became more of a distinction because you had your thrill seekers, people going out on tours or going out like battlefields at night or just going... breaking in. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. Breaking into places they thought were haunted. And getting the thrill, like saying, "Oh, we were there. We had some fun. We heard noises and this and that." And I think the people that wanted to be more serious about it recognized this and said, "Oh, we're going to call ourselves paranormal investigators now because we want to distinguish ourselves from the thrill seekers." And unfortunately, I do think there's a lot of people that are serious, that really want to learn more, to want to get down to the details and understand what's really going on. But I also think there's the paranormal investigator also splits. That title splits because it's people that want to be taken more seriously, but yet do the same shit the ghost hunters do. They don't differentiate. They don't separate themselves from the thrill seekers. They do pretty much the same thing. And then you have the serious people. I don't even know what I call myself anymore. I usually call myself a skeptic. I don't like calling myself a paranormal investigator because it just sounds like it's overused. It's like a buzzword now. But is there a difference? Yeah, there's a difference. I think it's more than just ghost hunter and paranormal investigator. I think there's slices in between there, where people kind of fill in different categories. So I think there's definitely like serious people. And I think the very serious people really don't care about the title. Yeah. You just do what you do and that's it. You know, what people call you is what people call you, and you just go about your business. And that's kind of how I like to look at it. That's how I kind of handle it. Like, I don't introduce myself. Oh, I'm a Kenny Biddle. I'm a paranormal investigator. No, I'm Kenny Biddle. How you doing? And that's it. Like, you know, I don't tell people. I mean, if they ask, I say, yeah, I'm a skeptical guy, or I'm the token skeptic when I'm clowning around, because I do that a lot. I even have a T-shirt that says "Token Skeptic" on it, and I show up at ghost hunts with it. You know, just to have fun, not to piss anyone off. But I rather just introduce myself as me and go from there. So, good question. Good question. Is that like a I'm on board with you. I'm not so on board with you. That sounded good. I like that. Let's see. Steve Hummel. We have our own points of view. That's good. That's good. Ooh, really? I'm looking down at the comments. Research. So important. Yes. Researcher. No, I don't. Sometimes I say I'm a researcher. If somebody asks for a title, I usually stumble. I really do stumble. Like, what do I call myself? I don't know. I'm some dickhead that's looking into your claim. That's about it. Just know I'm going to piss you off at one point or another, and that's how it's going to go. So I just laying it out there on the table for you before we begin. So there you go. I think we're good. We've reached the end of the comments, which is good. We're almost at 3 hours. Wow. 5 minutes shot. So if you would be so inclined, why don't you tell people where they can contact you if you have, well, I don't know if you have any events scheduled right now because, you know, no one, but if you coming up.
I could. Obviously, I have my website, which is accessparanormal.com for all the ladies or gentlemen and the audience. If you ever forget what the website is, think of Access Hollywood and just change it to paranormal. I've got it's I'm on Facebook and on Instagram and on Twitter as well, so you can feel free to join and follow from there. I've got a couple of things virtually, event-wise, coming up. I'm in planning at the moment, so do stay tuned because while the world's becoming a lot more virtual at the moment, I won't be leaving any man behind. So by all means, go and check it out, accessparanormal.com.
Awesome. So I have, I mean, anyone who's familiar or not familiar with me, I do a blog, which is on Facebook called I Am Kenny Biddle. I have a YouTube channel under my name, Kenny Biddle, where all my videos are up. Once in a while, I do Ask a Skeptic, which is what this live stream is, where I randomly go online and do like an hour or so of just Q&A, which is fun. I also do, I write a column for Skeptical Inquirer magazine. I do the online version, so you can see all my stuff at skepticalinquirer.com and look up Kenny Biddle. You'll find my stuff. I do conferences. I don't have anything scheduled. I mean, all the stuff that I had scheduled has been canceled. So I'm just waiting out for everything to come back to somewhat normal and get out there again. But if you're having a paranormal conference and you're interested in having a skeptical person, like me, if you watch this and you're like, hey, he's not too bad, let me know. If I can make it, I'll come back. He's not too bad. He's we can handle him. No problem. So that's it. That's basically it. Thanks for everyone for joining. We had a lot of people. We were up at one point. I think we had like 30 some people viewing, which is great for me. We had a lot of questions. I loved it. It was great having you on. I appreciate you doing this, taking the time and chatting with me, answering some questions. Why not?
Well, it was absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Well, I mean, what else were you going to do? I had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this. I mean, if you're up for it, I'd like to do it again in the future, and just get together like this and just spend a couple hours with everyone and chat. So I'm going to end this broadcast. Don't hang up yet. Well, everyone else, we're going to hang up on. So everyone else, never stop learning, be good, help each other out. And that's it. This will be over soon and we'll be back to some kind of normal and see each other. All right. Take it easy, guys.
Thank you.